Hey, good evening. Welcome to the November 14th meeting, of the Barrington Planning Board. Start with the roll call of members, starting with Ms.
Capiello here.
Tessie, you're here?
Driscoll here. Item is 7th, 2023. Does anyone have any questions, corrections?
I make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
I'll second it.
Roll call.
Aye.
Capiello, aye.
Tessie, your aye?
Driscoll, aye. Staff updates with the town planner.
I don't have any updates.
No updates
Nope.
today. Okay, next discussion with the board for preliminary conceptual site plan. The Ayers Lake Campground has asked to come on December. Since it's not a, we don't need a. Item B, Coot Farm Conservation Subdivision. Forward.
If you could just hit the button in front, if it lights up green, then you're on.
Oh, great, thanks. Good evening. My name is Mitchell Racer, and I'm here with my partner, Andrew Kemp. He's zooming in. I think he can hear us. He'll be able to speak. And we're here conceptual review for the Coot Farm property on Canaan Back Road. We've already had really useful meetings with the town staff. Vanessa's been really helpful. I had a meeting with Fire Chief Walker, and we've met with DES Wetlands. And then yesterday we met with the Southeast Land Trust of New Hampshire, SELT, to talk about sort of overall open space goals in this area and conservation needs. In summary, the project is about 560 acres, comprising 9 different parcels. And some of you might be familiar with this property. It's sort of a significant property in terms of its ecological value and some of the architecture. It's a zone general residential, and in our initial analysis of the site, sort of a traditional subdivision of there's a yield of approximately 175 lots. But we're looking to the sort of conservation subdivision approach to consolidate the growth in a way, in a sort of a smart growth manner, and then maximizing the amount of open space. So looking at this, sorry here, I'll try to speak into the same point at the same time. You can see sort of outlined in white is the larger parcel. And then potentially in this green color would be potentially the conserved lands, which is quite contiguous to each other. And then a smaller area here and a smaller area up front that would potentially become sort of the focused development area to sort of receive that. This sort of context map is great to show sort of the 405 acres of the Leighton Forest to the north, Stonehouse Pond here, and how this can sort of begin to maybe help create some better connectivity, maintain that sort of unfragmented habitat in that area, while carefully placing housing sort of right off 202 when you come in. So it's, right as you come out of Canaan Back Road, you'll be able to access the housing without having to travel too far down that road. So turning to sort of our concept plan, which you have with you, already submitted to you. We're looking at, again, trying to maintain as much of that existing special habitat and really keeping that as a contiguous, unfragmented habitat, especially almost, all the wetlands of special significance, streams, and really trying to have no impact on those streams. There is a proposed, so just starting off at 202, you have about a 20-acre piece down here where we envision doing, at this point, some duplexes. Then moving into the property, single-family lots here, maintaining the existing home with approximately 30 acres around it here, coming back across over here along an existing road that cuts up between these two wetlands of special significance, utilizing that existing road and a culvert crossing there, to some more single-family lots here, and then to a trailhead in this area. When I met with CELT yesterday, they had some great input on this design and talked about some greater connectivity issues that are being looked at throughout southern New Hampshire. So they suggested maybe moving some of these lots to allow for the connectivity that's really been mapped through here this way. So, conceptually, this is still the approach we want to take, but we're really interested in getting your feedback tonight. Two areas that we're specifically looking for feedback, although we're welcome and happy to have any feedback. We understand that we would be crossing through a buffer here, not an impact on the direct wetlands, but a buffer. So that would require a special permit, 9.6. And then in terms of the approach, we'd like to do, at this point at least, some duplexes and then some single family to try to bring a range of housing types to the market. But sort of going through your ordinance, if you pass it around, it's an interesting sort of a situation where you can do, like, according to how it reads, you can do single family, you can do multifamily, but you can't really mix the two, unless I'm not reading this properly. I think maybe you can mix the two if you do it all as like a condo type project with no individual lots. We're not sure sort of the technical reason why you can't do both types of housing. So we would like some guidance on that. And we're willing, if needed, to basically treat the duplex development as one conservation application, subdivision application, and sort of, conceptually provide tons of open space for that, and then simultaneously do a second application for the single family homes to meet your ordinance that doesn't allow you to mix housing types. Now, I don't know why you can't mix housing types, but it's.
Can I explain that?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you read what it says, you can't do individual lots, and you can't do cluster groups, and then detached dwelling things. So those are the ones you can't mix. So if you did all like individual detached housing, you could do all of that. Or you could do a cluster group, and your cluster groups could be like 2 units and 1 unit, but it would still be a cluster group. So it's not that you can't have single family and duplexes. You can't mix those 3 types of units here. So you can't, so like that 30 acres you wanted to take off of the farmhouse, that's a conventional subdivision. You can't do that with your cluster. So you would have to do a subdivision, break that off, then come back in with the larger people and do the cluster to stay into one of these. I mean, the conservation subdivision to stay into one of these. That's where the mixing is.
Yeah, we absolutely want to do whatever the ordinance requires.
I mean, I just thought I would kind of explain it to you because you were trying to say that we were trying to say you couldn't do that, but you actually can.
Oh, we
You
can.
just can't mix, you can't mix these groupings.
It's
But it does-
multiple applications.
Yeah, you need multiple applications.
We still have to do 2 conservation subdivisions and 1 normal subdivision. So 3 different subdivision submittals,
Well, technically, yeah.
because you can't mix.
And each one will
duplexes.
stand alone on its own merits, and then you would have to do the yield plan for each one separately on its own merits.
Yeah,
And before we
Yeah.
leave, we probably ought to pull up your conventional one and go over some stuff there, because that's gonna be the crux of what you really get for density.
yeah, I have that here. We can look at that. So that's good to understand. We thought that was the case, that you're not allowed to mix duplexes and single family. I still don't understand why you can't technically mix them, and we're okay with that. I don't need to understand why. We just have to meet your ordinance. So we will do 2 different open space conservation subdivision applications. It's twice as much work for us, but if that's what your ordinance requires, we're willing to do it. I still don't understand why you can't have duplexes here and single family there.
That's what I was trying to explain. That's not what this says.
What is,
What it says is, you can't have individual house lots
yeah,
mixed with the cluster groups, and also mixed as where you have no boundaries. So you got individual like condos of each unit with all one big lot, or cluster groups, or single. So you could all do single lots. And if all of them are single lots, whether you put a duplex on those single lots or a single home, or if you do a duplex in a cluster and a single home in a cluster, it doesn't matter. You just can't do lots, cluster in all one open space. Those are the 3 things they're describing. They're not describing single family homes and duplexes.
Great, we appreciate that input, and we will, that's how we'll proceed. That's excellent, thank you. So we'll do one submittal.
Well, you'd still have to break the farmhouse off because
Yeah.
that's not a conservation.
Yeah,
site.
yeah, exactly. We'll do one conservation plan, which I think is much cleaner for us in terms of the math. It's less convoluted, the spreadsheets, everyone, it's very transparent. We don't have to do multiple sort of analysis in terms of open space. And I think it's all much more above board for everybody to understand it that way. And so we'll carve off that one parcel, and then we can then take the rest of the land. I mean, fortunately for us, there's so much land here. There's just so much acreage, right? It's unusual in that amount of acreage that and then also I think we're really fortunate to be able to really consolidate so much of that acreage as permanent open space. Because if you look at, say, the conservation commissions, like, studies for, land that they want to conserve, this is basically, the land, this is the highest priority in the town, this parcel. And after meeting with CELT, they basically said that this approach is, in their mind, the best way to sort of proceed with if you're going to do some development. It really maintains the maximum open space and then allows you to sort of transfer that development in a more smart growth manner up front. So they were pretty happy with that. And I'm actually probably going to walk the site with them next week. So that's great. Xander, at this point, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, can you guys all hear me okay?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for having us tonight. I just want to introduce ourselves. So my name is Xander Kempf. I run Clear Summit Investments for a local development firm. I grew up in Amherst, New Hampshire, went off to college in the military, served for a while, and then got into real estate development. We focused on residential multifamily housing across the state. We've done a lot of value add multifamily, taking old distressed buildings and renovating and improving, got into new construction. We've done a lot of affordable housing. Mitchell and I are working on a mill conversion over in Antrim. So this is right along the lines of the type of project that we've been doing. Mitchell has a couple decades of site planning and land use planning experience. So in twofold. One, we have a company goal of creating as much housing as possible, but also wanting to address the housing need of the state and knowing that we do have a housing shortage statewide. So not only is this project, good for us to do, it's something we can take pride in, but it's also something that will help the community and the state as a whole, because we are creating housing stock, and more places for people to live, more housing to support local employers. So thank you for having us tonight. We again welcome your feedback for anything that we can do. We always like this stage of the planning process, coming in and gathering as much input as we can. That way we're working with the local community and ensuring that we're developing something that fits in with the local populace. It's something that is wanted and welcomed by the town, and turns out to be a good quality project.
Thanks, Xander. Yeah, so we're excited to bring forth just these preliminary ideas, and like I said, we've already been having a lot of these conversations, and they've already helped shape our approach, shaped our understanding of the ordinances, and we want to proceed to make refinements as we move along with the project and our due diligence. So just a quick summary of this approach is that of the approximately 560 acres, this approach would preserve and conserve about 450 acres. So it's, like a good portion of that project would be maintained in perpetuity as open space. And not only that, but pretty significant open space in terms of the state analysis and town of Barrington's analysis of the land. So we'd like to try to have a housing win-win and a open space win-win.
The main part of the height area, that was logged in the last couple of years.
Yeah, that's what CELT told me yesterday.
Yeah.
That was pretty
You can
heavily
see
logged.
that from the aerials.
Yeah, it's pretty heavily logged, CELT was saying.
So you intend to use whatever path they use to get into that area through the prime wetlands?
Yeah, there's between the two prime wetlands, there's actually one here and one here.
Yep.
And there's a gap. there's a very established road. I would call it, it's not a logging road. I would call it more of almost a gravel type road with a culvert. It's very established. It's not a logging road. It's probably been there for 100 years or plus. There's also another one that crosses right here where these little chain of ponds are. We're not proposing to maintain that crossing. You know, that's sort of right in the middle of the wetland. This one literally sort of crosses between two significant wetlands, and so there'll be no impact on the significant wetlands. It'd be only in the buffer area. And that's where that 9.6 special permit comes in, because we're moving into the buffer.
I don't think we've ever granted a 9.6 for prime wetlands before, so this could be.
Okay, that's good to know. Not a 9.6 for going through a buffer.
Yeah, right. The buffer is 100 foot on either side.
That's exactly correct.
And you're gonna have to intrude on the buffer.
That's exactly
Yeah.
correct. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
As we're planning this out, I know this is preliminary, but is that something that you all would consider for this plan?
I don't think you can answer that at this point.
Yeah, once we see all of the specifications, you know, that your engineering team draws up. you can
There isn't
determine.
enough data to,
Yeah, you need a
tell you.
wetlands delineation probably.
Oh, yeah, we need full survey,
Yeah,
full
right,
wetlands,
yeah.
you know, everything.
I
We're,
think-
right now, we're just working with available data from the state and the town,
And
which
you
is
met with
pretty good.
You met with the fire chief, you said?
Met with fire chief, met with DES wetlands from the state.
Yeah.
I've already walked the site. I've got decades of wetlands experience.
Sure.
And
He met with the road agent, the highway department.
not yet, not
Okay.
yet, not yet. We know that this, you know, the project has to, you know, we have to meet with everybody, but we're trying to, you know, get up front and meet with as many people as we can, including yourself, to get as much input as we move
The
forward.
280,000 square lots on Old Settlers, which is conventional layout. I think after we did Malago, we decided they really shouldn't be together on a conservation subdivision.
No,
Probably
they
should
The
be.
mixing of the two things.
right,
Yeah.
they can't
You
be.
can't mix the two.
So
They
we'll
went and got a
stick-
ZBA, got a variance to do that.
Yeah, I know they
That's
did.
what we're talking about here, the
Right.
mixing of the.
So those will be separate.
Oh, okay, I understand. Oh, that's interesting. Sure. No, we can make that adjustment so they're all,
Yep.
they're all conservation size lots, 20K.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
Well, they don't have to be 20K. That's the minimum size is 20K.
Yeah.
So some of them can be bigger. A lot of times you're seeing them at like 1 acre lots or something.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to fit the well and the septic on the same lots.
Yeah.
I think if you look at the regulations, you'll see that you could do like your wells and stuff on some of your open space area, and then you could have your septic so you can separate them. That's all in the regulations too. I'm
Yep.
assuming you guys have read through those and seen it.
Absolutely, yeah. And also looked at, you know, all the buffering. Yeah, just to be clear, we are not at the engineering phase yet. We are
Yeah.
not engineering. We are at the very early stages, trying to gather information, gather input. And so we have not completed any official boundary surveys or wetland surveys. We're really at the early stages of this in our
We
conversation.
did have a preliminary conceptual come in, and they were all 20-acre lot, 20,000 square foot lots. And we haven't heard from them since. I think maybe they thought it was kind of small, pile everything onto that lot that size.
A 20,000 square foot lot?
Yeah.
Well, I think in this town, as I've had conversations, you're allowed to, you can have a lot as small as 20,000
Right.
square feet with water and septic.
I
Yeah.
guess it's also an issue of marketability. I mean, houses would be pretty close together.
Sure, but that's true. That's absolutely true, but we're trying to meet the spirit of the open space subdivision, which is to maximize open space
yeah.
and do smart growth. And rather than spread it out over the whole 560 acres.
Yep.
So, you know, it's an interesting way to look at it. You know, how much do you eat into that open space? So we are aware that some of those lots potentially might be bigger for marketability, but we also think this land is so beautiful. Just being there is, you know, there's a benefit to living there and being surrounded by that property. Even if you had a 20,000 square foot lot, it's
Right.
like there's a lot of value added by being on this property. It's quite lovely. And we also like that, and we're glad we can proceed, at least conceptually, with the mix of the housing types, the duplexes and the single family. That's great. The way I was reading the ordinance, I apologize, I was confused. It sounded like it was either or, like you could either do only single family or duplexes. You couldn't mix it. So I'm glad we're allowed to mix it. Because
Well, if you do lots, then you can only have one. So that's where that 20,000 thing with the lots, because if you do the thing with the lots for single-family homes, that's option 1.
Yeah.
So if you go that route, you can't do duplexes on the lots.
Yeah.
If you did the one where it says, the land without boundaries, that's when you can have the stuff where you got your attached and detached. So, but you can't, if you wanted to do duplexes and you wanted to do them as the lots without boundaries for part of it and the other ones with lots, then you would have to do 2 of them still, because it's not because they're single family and multifamily, it's because of how if they're lots, if it's lots without boundaries, if it's cluster groups, those are the 3 things that divide it up, but each one of them, you're allowed to do different things.
So it's really more about the type of land ownership than it is.
Correct.
And it's more about land ownership than housing type. Well, so we understand that then we could basically condoize the whole project. And then by condoizing it, there's no individual lots. And that way you can, some places you can have some attached, some places you can have detached. So the whole thing is basically a giant.
And the
Wilderness
condominiumizing of
condo.
the area, and you would condominiumize the area for each one of them and show what is going to be left for open space, so it's clear what the open space is.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Yeah, the ratio of open space to density always has to, the math always has to pencil out. Correct. Yeah. That's good to know. I mean, we would like to be able to market lots, and we now understand to do that, we'd have to do 2 separate applications. So
The duplexes couldn't be on lots. That's what the issue is.
yeah, they would have to be condoized, right?
Well, and it would be as a lot without boundaries to have that's where it says, it's on option C there, where it says, as land without lots, you can do the attached or detached.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And none of these individual lots we're looking at for duplex. In the area at the corner closest to 202, that cluster down there is where we're proposing duplex in the condominiumized manner. All of the individual lots we're looking at for single family.
Yeah, so those would have to be done as 2 different setups then, because of it's not because they're single family and duplexes, it's because one's done with lots without boundaries and the other one's done with lots.
Yeah. So, yeah, so we understand we either have to do 2 applications or 3 applications, the house, 2 different conservation subdivisions, or do 2, the house and condoize everything. So that I now understand the approach we have to take, and we'll look at that. We'll see what we need to, how we want to proceed. But either way, we also understand that, all the numbers have to pencil out in terms of open space, allocation of lots for each unit, so that in balance, the whole project works out, and it's very transparent in terms of how the land's being allocated. That's why I conceptually showed this here, this line, just conceptually, like, you could have a project here, and that would be all of its open space, and you could have a project here, and that would be all of its open space. And, and we understand we have to come forward with all the math, but based on this, it's already working, just because there's so much land to work with. I did bring that yield plan in, the conceptual yield plan. If people want to take a look at that, I have that up here. I can.
I think that'd be a good idea if you could bring that up, because that's usually where the crux of the conservation subdivisions all get started.
Yeah, so
Can you put it on the board? Just put it, no, right up on your easel. Or
yeah,
put it
it's a
on
little
the
light to read from a distance. But yeah, you can see we just took we just maximized our points of connectivity. We have 1, 2, 3 off of the road, 2 roads coming back, and then multiple roads leading back into there. So there's multiple loops,
There's no wetland delineation at this time, correct?
Oh, well, we,
Because even your upland soils a lot of time has jurisdictional wetlands all running through it. And then because of our regulation of the 40,000 of contiguous uplands, 60,000 free of exposed ledge and hydrocase soils.
Yeah.
A lot of times the 80,000 square foot lot, if that's what you did for math, is not going to work, because usually it comes out to 2 to 3 acres, then plus your road losses and everything else in order to get your total lot count. I guess that's why I wanted to make sure it's not just based on numbers, it's based on what the lots actually are with that, once that delineation's done.
Just so I understand, you're saying that none of the lots can have wetlands in the lot?
No. You need 40,000 of contiguous uplands. You have to have 60,000 that's free of exposed ledge and hydrocase soil. So you could have jurisdictional wetlands as part of the 80,000, but but you still need, no, well, I said it wrong. It's 35,000 of contiguous uplands, not 40, but you would need that. So each lot would have to meet those standards of a conventional subdivision
Sure.
with lot frontage and everything else. So without knowing what you got for jurisdictional wetlands, usually what happens is someone comes in, they come in and talk to us and they say, well, we got 80,000, 80,000, 80,000, 80,000, it's going to give us this much. A lot of times it works out to 3 acres on the average for the lots when they're all broke down because of what that wetlands, how it works out on the lots.
Sure, and I appreciate that very much, and I already tried to anticipate that. And so, I already tried to make most of the lots be out of the wetlands, be in upland. I looked at the soils maps, given our available data, like soils maps, which allow you to fine tune sort of your understanding of the wetlands and the mapping. And actually, this mapping is pretty good so far for us to work with. So I've already tried to anticipate that whole idea of the lots not being in the wetlands, being in the upland. And as you can see, most of the wetland is not part of any lot. Maybe some of it.
The prime wetland's not part of any lots, but those upland areas, you're gonna find there's a whole bunch of jurisdictional wetland that mixes through there. Barrington is notorious. We got little small wetlands and conductivity to them all through. That's all that stuff you're calling uplands there together. I bet you half of that probably has some jurisdictional wetlands in it.
Well, yeah, and you can actually see it. If you look a little closely here, just so to follow on your point, that's absolutely correct. There are wetlands up in this area, and fortunately they're already mapped. So it allows us to at least have a preliminary conceptual level understanding of sort of the site capacity. We understand that all this will be fine tuned as we proceed, but given the data we have now, soils data, wetland mapping, which I got to say is actually, New Hampshire is pretty advanced in this. It allows you to do good, I think, solid planning at this level without having full complete site data. So, we understand that this yield study is approximate for right now. That's why I say plus or minus. It could be 5 lots more, 5 lots less. We don't know until we really get into the data. We don't know. So we'll get into that as we proceed. And then as you understand, working with that yield then gives us the number we work with on the conservation subdivision. There's a direct translation from the yield study to the conservation plan. If the yield study says 100 and it says 3 houses, you can then do 3 houses in your conservation subdivision.
A little off topic for this, what is your build-out plan? Did you have one?
Oh, a build-out plan. I don't think we do, Xander, correct? That's probably ahead of the curve.
Yeah, because we usually do about 30 dwelling unit building permits a year.
Yeah.
And we've got 300 units in the pipeline. So.
Yeah, the market's very strong, as you know. Is there a moratorium on building permits?
No.
Oh, okay,
No,
so it's
no,
just
that that's what the market has yielded over the last 10 years.
yeah, no, we've seen an interesting rise, I think, in the
30
market.
per year.
Yeah. Xander,
Yeah, so what we'll likely be doing, there's a couple of different exits for us. We haven't decided on an exit yet, but 3 different options. One of them being partnering with a local builder who will come in and do all the vertical construction. So that would be coming in and building out the community. We would rely on their local expertise and guidance for market absorption and building that out. The other option would be a rental community and maybe more focused on the duplex side, but looking at doing a build to rent for those. And the third would be some combination thereof. But as we progress, we'll conduct market studies and ensure that whatever we're moving forward with has market demand for it. In the past, we've done a lot of pre-sale work, so not wanting to get ahead of the curve and making sure there are buyers lined up for any inventory that we're building.
thanks, Xander. That's helpful. So, but back to the 9.6, you said that you've actually never granted a 9.6. That helps us.
For prime wetlands, yeah.
That's very helpful for us to know.
And I can remember, somebody else maybe have.
I've been here since those were done, and I think the only ones that ever been granted on jurisdictional wetlands. I don't think I've ever seen one on prime
For
wetlands.
primes, yeah.
But most of the time, when people are doing their build out, there's always a way to get, so you don't have the prime wetlands in the way. So if you don't have a hardship, basically, you're not gonna get relief anyways. So if anybody else had a way to get around without doing that, the planner was gonna look at them, no, you can still do that, yeah. So you have there's no reason for us to give the relief. So maybe your situation's a little different to where you got justification to ask for relief. I'm not saying they're gonna give it to you, but if you have more justification, then they gotta come up with a rationale whether or not that justification is sufficient. That's why they were saying they can't tell you straight up how they will vote on it, because it depends on what you give them for information to make that,
Yeah.
right? And then if you want to stay after your presentation, there's going to be another presentation about giving relief to the 9.6 that these guys are here for.
Yeah, yeah.
So it might be beneficial for you to stay and kind
Yeah,
of
yeah.
absorb that too.
No, we appreciate that. We know that you can't make any sort of binding decisions tonight, but it's good to hear the sort of the history of how you've treated the wetlands, and that's really useful for us to understand as we sort of make assessment moving forward. It's very useful. Thank you. Xander, did you have anything else you wanted to ask or clarify?
Yeah, and if we could just get a general feeling towards this project, like I said, we always want to develop in line with the community and with what is desired by the local community. So, I know 175 units is a decent sized impact. If we can just get a general feeling on the consensus towards this, if it's wanted, and then any other specific things that you may want to see included in a plan as we move forward.
I guess one thing I'd like to probably just throw out there is having this 2 or 3 different plans you're gonna do. If the 45 units that are furthest out, if those would be the last you would do, and that area wouldn't be disturbed until the other units have been fully built out. I wonder if that's a thought. Just so you wouldn't have all the trees cut down and just would lay fallow for waiting for the market to get.
Oh, sure. No, that's totally fair, and I think that makes sense. I mean, we would of course want to provide access back there, like some sort of trailheads.
Right. I mean, you have the
community could-
current road that would allow people to go in and maybe
allow
you could
people to
just
get back in there.
clear a parking lot for them. That would be nice.
Yeah.
Just clearing out how many acres that is, and just waiting.
Yeah.
That's a great. We appreciate that, but that makes total sense. That there's no reason to disturb that area until
Right.
if it needs to be.
Yeah, we would certainly progress like that, and although the lot lines cover a large area here, we'd want to keep the rural nature of the local area. And I'm sure, as you know, a half-acre lot doesn't mean we're clearing a half-acre of land. It's just enough for a driveway and a house and a small yard, and people like their privacy, and we would be leaving as many trees as we possibly could. The area how the map is oriented, the top and top left area is the portion that was logged previously. Everywhere we're looking at has not been logged. There's a lot of very old growth. So we'll also look to design our plan to keep a lot of that old growth, keep a lot of those larger trees, and see if we can wrap roads around them or build houses around them, kind of keep that old growth nature of the area.
I was looking at the Fish and Game topo map of that area, and they do show a lot of wetlands right in the middle of that cluster up there. Now, it's only when you get somebody in there to delineate it, as John was saying.
Yeah.
You can find wetlands anywhere.
Oh, yeah.
I think there's 4,000 or 5,000 acres of wetlands in Barrington.
Yeah, no, the data that you have is incredible in this town. I mean, as a planner, as a landscape architect, the resources it's terrific. It's been, and the stuff I was looking at yesterday with my meeting itself, the additional data they presented to us, it was extremely helpful. I mean, yeah, it's very advanced, I would say.
I know this is probably.
I have like 600 units of workforce housing underway in the sort of main area right now, and this level of sort of data that's available to the public it really benefits for good planning.
I know this is probably a little backwards, but Mitchell, would you mind giving a quick background on yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm based in Portland, Yarmouth, Maine, just above Portland, and I'm a landscape architect, and most of my work is in the area of sort of either I'm working with like sea level rise in cities or working with, or in the area sort of like workforce housing. And most of my work is nonprofit work. I work with a lot of cities, municipalities, groups like the Nature Conservancy, helping plan open spaces, plan smart growth areas like regional smart growth and sort of urban smart growth. So this type of project and this type of approach is, I'm really passionate about that approach where you can actually mix housing and sort of land conservation in one project. The project Xander and I are doing together right now in Antrim, we're taking an old mill and developing that into affordable housing and artist spaces and restaurants and commercial spaces. That's like, again, a great, I think, typical type of project where you're looking at sort of revitalizing a downtown and bringing online a different type of housing that's, desperately needed. In recent years, I've just gotten more and more into sort of the housing. I think because it's such a crisis everywhere in New England, it's gotten to be a very exciting part of my practice where I can combine sort of what I call like mission-driven work, which is trying to provide housing, especially in areas like Barrington. So thanks, Xander.
Anybody?
I just have a general comment.
Yeah.
And it's more when I look at this space. When I look at the placement of apartments in here, it doesn't align with where apartments are in Barrington. With the layout of Barrington and how that space is configured around our town. It's either in our corridor off Route 4, or like 125, and even potentially 9 with the town center area. And this is this like extreme outlying of where we're looking at apartment spaces.
You mean the duplexes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, those
54
are,
units, yeah.
yeah, sure. That's good to know. I think it's allowed in this area, it's zoned to allow it, correct?
Well, you can have mixed use development, or not mixed use development, multifamily development anywhere in the general residential, as long as the lot size is large enough.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, that's good for us to know.
This wouldn't be multifamily housing. If it's one and two family, it doesn't get site review. It's all approved as part of your subdivision. So that's not quite the same thing. So it's probably something you got to kind of keep in mind when you're looking at this subdivision. Because the subdivision, if you look at our regulations now, it isn't like you do the lots and this is how many lots you get. It talks about units.
Right.
So when they figure how many units they get on their yield plan, that's how many units they get. So if they say, instead of saying it's not like they're going to get 2 lots, they can get 2 units.
Right. It's just when I look at placement of where that is in correlation to how the town functions, it's an outlier.
Seems out of place, right? Yeah. But
We got the mobile home park right next door. It's got-
Yeah,
The housing density there is pretty high.
Yeah, there's a high density mobile home park. These are potentially very high-end duplexes. I mean, have you looked at the price of a duplex lately? It's astronomical, right?
Right.
It's
Duplexes and multifamily are 2 night and day different options.
yeah, oh, very much so. Yeah, multifamily versus a duplex is a very different beast.
What would you be looking at for duplexes cost-wise? What's the range right now?
Xander, do you want to speak to that?
We haven't gotten that far, frankly. We're not looking to go anything ultra luxury or ultra low end. We'll probably be somewhere in the middle market, aimed at a workforce or median income housing.
54.
6.
There's nothing.
no more questions, I guess. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your time.
You might, like I said, you might want to stay for the next presentation.
So you're talking about
Modification of the-
9.6?
But John,
Yeah.
this doesn't apply to new developments, subdivisions.
Yep.
This is really- But if someone wants a 9.6, they still got to ask for it and go through this process. And if you change the regulations and you add it in here, it still applies whether it's new construction or not, to get a 9.6. I'm just telling you, you can't write a regulation that says new construction can't get relief and everybody else can. I'm just want to make that clear.
So this potentially would apply to new projects forthcoming, if there were some changes.
They want it to be to just existing lots that people have already developed, but anytime you have an ordinance, you have to have relief built into it by state law. You can't give relief to certain people and not to others. So I want to be careful to make sure that that's not what you anticipate this being, because we can't do that by law.
You're right, it has to apply.
Correct, correct.
Introduce them.
You may want to stay and listen to it, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, no, we appreciate that, thank you. It'll be helpful.
Already introduced it, Mr. Chairman?
Speechless.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I think that's the first,
Think so? No. Okay, next item is item number 6, item A. Proposed zoning amendments to 9.6. Mark, floor is yours.
Chairman, members of the board, thank you for having me this evening and giving me the opportunity to speak to the board. I might start at the back and maybe begin with John's comment or understanding. And I don't necessarily disagree with what John's point is about regulation having to apply across the board, but I think you'll find the distinction we're trying to make is that large projects, theory, have the luxury of enough area, they should be exercising what's called avoidance and minimization. So they shouldn't even have to use this process that we've set up. This is geared more towards people existing structures and are already either in or very near the buffer and are able to demonstrate that they need to expand the direction of. With that, let me dive in
Yeah,
here.
with that said, though, I would say half of the 9.6s that have been asked for in the past have come down to, had nothing to do with existing structures that are already there. It's like someone's trying to do something in order to use their property, even trying to stay away as much as they could, they weren't able to.
Right.
So, so.
And that's an excellent point, and we might have to go back and revisit this. And for those types of instances where even though they have a large area, there's some characteristics of the property that require them need to be in the buffer to make productive use of their land. And there may be elements of this that you may be able to apply to that. So let me back up a bit. For the record, I'm Mark Jacobs, certified wetland scientist, certified soil scientist, certified professional erosion sediment control. I've been practicing in New Hampshire for 8 years. And Vanessa, I already see one of the
Sorry.
pitfalls with doing it
This way.
this way is, I don't have it in front of me, so I'll have to look at the monitor as well. So I was approached quite some time ago by members of the Conservation Commission asking if I'd be interested to look into issue with your section 9.6 of your zoning in Article 90 Wetland Protection District overlay in section 9.6 special permit for construction wetland buffer. So right now, in the way your zoning is written, in issuing special permits, and the commission was concerned that there's no real formula for evaluating applications to the planning board to waive all or part of the buffer. And that,
Can you tell him, I'm sorry to interrupt, can you turn that on? Thank you. Is it gonna say yes?
Okay.
Thank you.
do I need to?
Nope, you're good. I forgot to say to put that on.
Very
I
good,
apologize.
thank you, sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
So the commission was concerned about the potential for arbitrary decision-making as it related to issuing those special permits, and that the decisions might not be reproducible, or that they would be inconsistent, they wouldn't be legally sound, and that they weren't necessarily based in science, which, again, when you're evaluating applications to waive the buffer, that's something that should be based in science. Next, please, Vanessa. So we were tasked with, our objective was to develop a method to evaluate requests to waive the buffer that was more scientifically defensible, hopefully repeatable, was cost effective, that balanced the rights of landowners and the environment, and that focused on the actual wetland that was the subject of the waiver request and its associated buffer. Next, please. So with that, a little background on the importance of wetland buffers. Buffers function to protect infrastructure in Barrington, your roads, bridges, buildings, whether they're municipal buildings or private residences and dwellings. They function to protect drinking water quality, fisheries and wildlife habitat, stream flows, and perennial versus intermittent. The point that I had hoped to make there is that it's widely known now that development in a watershed can oftentimes make intermittent streams out of perennial streams. Why is that important? Well, perennial streams tend to provide more habitat for fisheries and aquatic organisms and the like, especially cold water fisheries for trout, if you will. It's the best example. And how that happens is when you get a lot of development in a watershed, the impervious surfaces, the roofs, the pavement, prohibits precipitation from reinfiltrating into the soil. And so it interrupts that base flow that these perennial streams have during times of drought or normal summer conditions, if you will. As you know, when you have to manage all that stormwater to prevent erosion, and you can't increase the rate of runoff onto adjacent or downstream properties by law, all that interrupts that natural cycle that gets that water back into the ground. Now, I'm getting off on a bit of a tangent here, but Alteration of Terrain Bureau revised their rules coming up on probably 10 years ago now. They require more reinfiltration. They require you to get more of that drainage back into the ground to try and imitate those former natural conditions. But as good as those regulations are, it's fraught with difficulties in terms of the practicality of trying to actually accomplish that. So anyways, this is why, one of the reasons why buffers are important for especially for stream. And of course, buffers are important to protect wetland functions as well. Next, please, Vanessa. So what other buffers functions do wetlands and buffers provide? They provide flood desynchronization, flood abatement functions. Again, that protects your infrastructure from washouts and damage, which is becoming more and more of an issue with climate change and these intense storms that we're having. As a matter of fact, on the drive over, I was listening to a report that said the number of intense storms dropping 3 or more inches of rain has increased, I think they said 60% since the 1960s. So that's something we have to look forward to, and it's a very real phenomenon. other functions provided by wetlands and their buffers, fish and aquatic organism habitat, groundwater discharge and recharge, again, helps protect your drinking water resources, nutrient trapping and transformation. When you think nutrients, think under normal circumstances, you would think nutrient is a good thing, but nutrients captures pollutants as well. And when you have excess nutrients, it's essentially a pollutant in the environment. So that's why wetlands and buffers are important as well to protect from excess nutrients in the watershed. Wetlands and the buffers provide sediment trapping. The law doesn't allow us to use wetlands as sediment traps, even though they can perform that function, because when they do, it degrades the wetland as well. So again, that's the other reason why we need buffers, because we're not really allowed to use wetlands by law, state law, as sediment traps. Wetlands and the buffers protect shorelines and banks, stream banks from erosion and that sort of thing. They also provide wildlife habitat, and they provide recreation, both consumptive and non-consumptive. Consumptive, think of hunting and fishing. Non-consumptive, think of photography and nature walking and bird watching, that sort of thing. Next, Vanessa. So we developed what I'll refer to here's the Barrington method, but the full name is the Barrington Wetland Assessment Method. And we reviewed a number of approaches. We came up with an approach that doesn't necessarily require a site visit, although it's always good to get eyes on the ground. So site visits are still suggested or recommended, but it's not necessarily required. This approach utilizes existing public GIS data that's readily available via the internet, if you will. Can be utilized by lay people, doesn't require a consultant such as myself to prepare it. We used proxies for the various functions, again, some of which I just discussed, to simplify things, because even a single function, evaluation of a single function as it relates to wetlands is a pretty involved process, and a full-blown or a very exhaustive wetland functional analysis is a pretty involved exercise, takes days, sometimes weeks to prepare. So we tried to come up with something that was a lot simpler and faster. And that was what you have is the result of several meetings with the joint committee that involved members of your board. John Driscoll was there, Paul Panish was there from the Conservation Commission, and several other members as well. So we have a fair amount of feedback from you folks in that regard. Next, Vanessa. So the method and the package that you have that we've developed has four major parts. We've developed some proposed zoning language. We developed the method and its data form. That's the crux of the exercise is the data form that we developed. We developed a user guide to help people, to guide them through completing the data form, if you will, and using the method. And then we developed rationales for each proxy that we chose to represent each one of the functions. Next, please. So here's the upper half of the data form, if you will. I thought it would be a little easier to read, but presumably you have it in front of you in paper. Oh, there you go. Excellent. So there's a total, I won't go into the weeds, if you will, on each function, but there's a total of 16 functions. We set, again, we chose a proxy to help us determine or help you determine whether or not a particular wetland and or its buffer were providing a particular function. We set it up as a yes or no form to try to eliminate potential biases that different users would have, and in so doing sort of level the exercise in such a way that no matter who completes the data form, they should all get the same result, basically. Next, please. So this is the bottom half of the data form, if you will, functions 10 through 16. So that's the form, and you utilize various websites, if you will, that are readily accessible, and ideally prepare a locus map for each one of these functions to document the finding, if you will, and support the completion of the data form. And then you do a tally at the end. And next, please. And the tally would, oh, I'm sorry, back up a bit. So this is a sample of some of the typical locus maps that you might print out or prepare in support of completion of the data form. This one evaluates wildlife corridors. You can see areas in red don't provide bona fide or useful wildlife corridors. Areas in green and that other sort of beige color, that happens to be the Merrimack River, that sort of beige color on the left there. And you can see areas in green, those areas in this particular map identify suitable wildlife corridors. Next, please. This is a portion of a larger map that identifies 100-year floodplain, which is again another one of the functions. And that in that particular map, the pink dashed line represents the actual subject property, as you can see there. No worries. Next one, please. This is another wildlife map. You can see the areas in green, blue. I actually took a screenshot of a little bit of the legend that goes along with this particular map as well. And then this last map shows nearby conservation lands, other open space areas, and that's important to identify projects where, as this gentleman, I think, used the term earlier this evening, you're trying to come up with or minimize fragmentation of large blocks of wildlife habitat or what have you. So, and again, that's just a few examples of some of the maps that hopefully would be prepared and submitted in support of the form. Next, please. So once that form is completed and reviewed, you come up with a tally of functions. It could be 0, but that's unlikely. That happens frequently. You'll hear people bandy around that make statements that a certain wetland has no functions and values. And whenever I hear that, I'm very skeptical, because every wetland has some functions and values. It's just a question of how much. But in theory, so we've got developed this table again with input from members of the subcommittee. If a wetland had 1 to 3 functions out of the 16, it only had a total of 3 functions, presumably they could get a buffer reduction of 40 feet up down to 10 feet. If you had 4 to 6 functions, you could waive the buffer according to this formula down to 20 feet, 7 to 9, 30 feet, so on and so on. Next slide, please. And this is another way of expressing the same information, just in a slightly different, more of a tabular form. So you can see again with 1 to 3 functions, that's a pretty low functioning wetland. The allowable buffer width could go down as low as 10 feet. So again, the way this is structured, hopefully, this is sort of piggybacking on the tail end of your current zoning. Hopefully, the board would still be requiring applicants to exercise avoidance and minimization if possible, if they have the luxury, if they have other land available for the proposed use. But this was designed or geared largely towards those situations where that isn't necessarily the case. So next, please. So, and then we developed section 961G for higher functioning wetlands. Those wetlands and buffers that provide 13 or more functions and values. And so this section provides some alternatives for the planning board. It's discretionary because with a wetland 13 to 16 or more functions, there's no allowance for waiving waiving the buffer because those are very high functioning wetlands. But this allows some discretion for the planning board to require maybe some concessions, for lack of better word, from the applicant to maybe provide some a rain garden or other stormwater management, best management practices, or the installation of buffer plantings, or in the case where the buffer is already missing, it's already been removed, maybe the buffer is restored or allowed to restore. You have a number of options there. And so this allows some discretion to the board to waive parts of the buffer under that circumstance, but to do so in exchange for some compensatory mitigation, if you will. And I think that's probably it. Let's check this last slide. No, that's the last slide. I want to mention Adele Matson assisted me with this effort. She was a big help, as was Vanessa, and the other members of the subcommittee were also a big help in preparing this. And that presentation represents the highlights, but I'm more than happy to answer questions if the board has any at this time.
I have some general commentary on it. I thought it was well put together. I think you can clearly tell, put a lot of effort into it. Some key things that stood out to me under the 9.6 parents 1F, the completion is provided of the provided data form, just making sure that that then, like, it references the ecological function and service data form, and then providing a form number or some way to reference that throughout the document, because at a couple points where you get into table 1, we talk about number of eco-sensitive functions as per noted on the eco-sensitive data. It's things that should connect it together. And the other part that stood out to me on it was right below that applies to requests for expansion of existing legal uses into the buffer and shall not be used for subdivision and site plan review, which ties back to what John had said. I actually had highlighted it in my notes when I had reviewed this. I think it's an interesting way of doing it, and right after it says, similarly, this procedure should not be used for large parcels with sufficient room and avoidance. And I had made a note that I said there needs to be an absolute there, where right now it just says similarly should not be. It has to be. In order to do that, I think you'd have to make it an absolute.
Reading that from an enforcement point of view, if it's a large parcel, you're exempt in that section, the way it's written.
Right. That's why
No, I'm just saying, if you read that as a compliance officer, it says it shall not be used for large parcels. Someone comes in for a large parcel, okay, you don't use that assessment. That's what that's saying to me.
Yeah, and again, the logic was because in theory, if someone had a large parcel, they have the room to avoid and minimize and shouldn't, in theory, shouldn't need to go into the
If you go
buffer.
to 9.61 that we already have in place in our zoning, it says, after review of all reasonable alternative, it is determined to be infeasible to place the structure outside the buffer zone. So that's already in place. So if it's infeasible to stay out of the buffer zone, you can't give them relief anyways by what we already have in our regulations. And then if you go to that next paragraph from where Andy just was, it talks about all the erosion control being in place prior and during construction. We actually have that in 1B. So a lot of this is repeated of stuff that's already in here, that's already effective on how we're controlling this anyways.
The only other item I had was, like the last paragraph under 9.6, parents 1G, parents GA. Right below that, it says, it is recommended that, and I'm like, this, a recommendation is just that. I'm like, from a planning board standpoint, our job is to apply rule as written, not play in the gray of, oh, well, our opinion on this one is yes, you can do it. Our opinion on the next one is no, you can't. That creates a huge conflict for how the board is supposed to work.
Okay. Point well taken.
Otherwise, I mean,
Strike out that first part.
Right.
It is, yeah.
That's what I was thinking. Or you could just say wear a waiver.
Yeah, yep. And that would still read,
It still, I think, accomplishes what you're.
right, still reads well.
If you're gonna do minor edits now, you go to the very beginning, 1E, where it says regarding loss of wetlands. This is all about the buffer, and if you read our existing regulations, if they get a wetland crossing where they can go into the wetlands, they're exempt from the buffer anyways.
Right.
So that, the whole thing about the town of Barrington has no authority over what happens in wetland, that's a state regulation.
So what you're saying is it should say.
Just the buffer. Should
Where
just have-
all issues regarding loss of a buffer.
I mean, you can put like wetland values maybe, to make sure that you're looking at the wetland values, but it's not the loss of the wetlands.
Mm-hmm.
Really, your assessment is based on the wetland values more than it is the buffer values.
Right. Yep. Yep. Nice catch, John.
Excuse me.
So while no one else is talking, I looked at this thing going through. I deal with people on a regular basis coming in. I don't know very many lay people that can go through that form and fill that out accurately.
Well, that said, we went round and round about this as well, and my understanding is, for now, it's the commission's intent is to, well, first of all, we're going to test this out for the next year, and it's going to be the commission that's going to be completing the form.
Well, that's what the regulation should say then, if that's what we're gonna do. I guess that was the.
Well,
point I'm
that
trying to
was
get to.
originally for the 3 or 4 you might get a year where some farmer wants to move a barn or something there. But if it's for subdivisions and site
Oh.
plans, then I think the whole thing has changed.
Well, the thing is, you can't give relief to one person and not another. The
Fine.
regulation
Well, okay,
requires-
I know. So that kind of just, I don't know, negates the whole plan that they had set up, that the Conservation Commission would do this stuff. They can't be doing this for site plans and subdivisions where you're, I don't believe.
Well, here's the killer part. If you come in for a site plan or a subdivision, they wouldn't have to go to all these other places to find the information to put in there, because they're gonna have on-the-ground hard data
Right.
to where those wetlands and stuff are located. So filling out that thing would be way more accurate with a plan that has all the delineation instead of this pie in the sky. Because you look at some of those other map things, I've been around long enough to know they're gonna show, okay, there's no wetland, there's no impact, we have no issue here. But the on-the-ground survey is gonna say, we do have a wetland here, there is an issue and there is a buffer. So they're gonna say, there is no issue, there is no wetlands, so it's gonna be 0. But then you're gonna look at it and the guy has a buffer. So what do? Can you allow the whole 50 feet?
Well, I think we're conflating though, John. I
I'm
think
just
we're-
trying to, how you enforce it and how you follow through with it.
Yeah,
That's the
absolutely.
difference.
Enforcement's going to be critical. And I'm not trying to create a nightmare.
Because I'm the guy that's gonna be
That's for
enforcing
sure.
it. That's why I'm saying this.
But we shouldn't conflate delineation with assessment of functions and values. And this is written in a way that addresses the vagaries, if you will, of the lack of specificity of these GIS resources. Just as you would never use these GIS resources in place of an actual on-the-ground wetland delineation for project design, enforcement of and administration of buffers and the like, but you can use it for assessing functions and values, and we've written it in such a manner that that I think this compensates for the inaccuracies, or the scale, I guess would be the better way to describe the scale of those GIS resources. Because as you just noted, those lines on those maps are plus or minus 50 feet or 100 feet. So for example, in our form, which is why we say, I'll just read you one example for educational potential. Using Granite View, is the wetland on the property or within 100 feet of the property protected by a permanent conservation easement or similar legal protective instrument? So again, that's why we say or within 100 feet of the property. That's to allow some of that.
Well, we both know that there's gonna be jurisdictional wetlands that GIS doesn't pick up.
Absolutely.
So when they do the survey is gonna show there's a wetland here. That GIS is gonna say, we don't have any wetlands within 500 feet.
Right. Well, that's why that's why we're saying within 100 feet. And we readily admit that some of those wetlands are going to slip through the cracks.
Well, they won't slip through the cracks because there's gonna be a 50-foot buffer on it because of our regulations when they come in.
Right.
But when you look at the relief's gonna say, oh, there's no function of values to this
Right.
wetland, even there still might be.
Right. There still might be. And we recognize that using this method, some of those are going to slip through the cracks. But again, we're trying to come up with something that was cost effective and repeatable. I'm the first one to admit this is not, perfect. There are going to be those that slip through the cracks. I guess it's up to the board at that point to determine, how they want to.
Well, so that's why I wanted to look at your specific regulations. If the Conservation Commission is gonna do it, it should say they're gonna do it, and it should be in this regulation, because, like I said, I deal with a lot of builders, and they're gonna come in and they're gonna go, I have no clue what this stuff means or what it is, and a homeowner is gonna be even less knowledgeable.
Yeah.
Well, luckily you said we have a whole year to work this out.
But I guess that
Well, if
also.
that's gonna be coming forward in this coming regulation, there's a lot of things to fix right here. That's why I'm saying we need to jump on it now and address it. If that's, because I thought it was gonna be for this year's regulations.
I thought, no, they,
Is that okay if he?
oh,
Since
Yeah,
he
this
was
is
part
all
of,
the
he was
discussion.
part, yeah, he
Part
was
of
part
the
of the
discussion.
committee.
yeah, he's not a.
The first thing that we need you to
Kept going back
understand
and
is
forth.
we're proposing that this be on a trial for the next year. We're not proposing, any warrant articles for this year. For this year.
You adopt a regulation, it's a regulation. It's not a trial. It is a regulation.
Right, they're
And
not
if you
looking.
don't-
We're not gonna
they're
adopt
looking
it.
We're
to
not
adopt
looking
right
to
now.
do that. this
So
year.
I guess I'm trying to understand. So you're not gonna put anything in zoning?
Not this
You
year.
just want the planning board to work with the conservation on the concept of what you're doing going forward to see how it works
We
out?
recognize
Yeah.
that this needs work.
Oh,
and we
okay,
need
so
to
that's a
try it
whole
out.
different perspective.
Yeah.
All right, I thought we were trying to put this in this year.
No,
I'm
no,
gonna
no,
have to
no, no.
enforce what that
We
says.
realize-
Oh, no, you don't know what you're doing to it.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I didn't make that
Particularly
clear.
with the grenade you just tossed.
Oh, yeah, like I said, I was like, oh, no, you don't know what you're doing to me when I'm reading this, you
Yeah,
know?
so the purpose of the two groups are coming together is to get this idea going, and they did initially
So
want
use
it
it
to be
as-
for this year, but then they were like, well, we want to see how it kind of shakes
Okay,
out.
that's a whole different.
But we
thing,
want to
yeah.
make sure that the planning board looks at this, makes their comments.
In my ideal
and that sort of
world,
thing, and then next year.
yeah, in my ideal world, there would have been time and, not to be crass, but a budget, a big enough budget for myself and Adele to test this out in the field for a year or more. But at the time, the thought was we were going to try to get on the warrant, for this coming town meeting in 2024. I think very recently, as a matter of fact, within the last month or so, we've sort of given up on that idea. And, Paul and other members of the commission have agreed that they will be doing the field testing, as it were. And I've made it clear to Paul that, I expect to be helping out as well with those few trials, this coming year. So I hope to help out. I'm very curious as well to test this out and see how it works. So I plan to make myself available for Paul and others to.
And I think the wording of this is going to have to change. There's going to have to be, based on what you're saying, a mechanism for reconciling the case that you bring up, where the wetland, this isn't even showing on the GIS, and we have a delineation on the plans that clearly shows wetlands. That needs to be in statute. How do we reconcile those with each other?
Is that something where you would do it by saying you'll fall to the more stringent of?
Well, you would still have to apply your 50-foot buffer, and when someone comes in for relief, you could look at it like there's a zero impact, so you could give up to that 50 feet, but you still should follow, in my mind, I'm just telling you how I think about this, you should still make them stay as far away as possible, and if it's feasible not to go in there, still stay with the regulations you have. You still don't want to just say, okay, that shows zero, so you can go ahead and have that buffer. I think you should
Which
still
sort of
follow
is what
your
you-
existing rules and still make sure you're not giving the farm away.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If it specifically states that that the more stringent rule is always
It
applicable.
always would have to be.
Has to be.
Right, but then that also means somebody can't come in here and try and play one off the other, and you're like, no, the more stringent rule is this.
Well, that's why if this is not written in zoning, see, that's why I had an issue when I'm looking at this wording. And I'm looking at, okay, how would I enforce this? I saw such a can of worms in this that I was cringing. I tell you the truth. That's the reason why I started talking. But if we stay with this regulations and you guys as a group, the two groups work back and forth, trying to implement this plan and working through the holes and stuff in the next year, I think that's a great idea. That's totally different than putting something in the regulations.
Right.
Well, then I think they anticipate coming back
Right, maybe next year when they
next
go to
year
which
to
makes sense.
refine it more. This is kind of showing you like where the starting point is.
Yeah.
Are
I
we
think
in
that's great. I think
agreement?
I think it's a really
Yeah.
good idea.
Yeah, believe me, I've been in front of the computer and I've been agonizing over this for months and trying to anticipate all the pitfalls, but I fully expect there's going to be something in here, maybe more than one little ticking time bomb that we haven't thought of when we try to apply it.
And we added that verbiage about large parcels just a week ago
Yeah.
because of a problem that we ran into. It's not something we wanted. And clearly this is something we're going to need to work on.
We, and in hindsight, that language may have been unnecessary if the avoidance and minimization protocols that you already have in here are followed.
If someone doesn't show good justification why they can't go away, this board denied more than one in the past.
Yeah.
I mean, it isn't like, oh yeah, this would be easier for you. That's not how it's been looked at. It's never been looked at that way.
It's interesting because I have to do it on a almost daily basis, apply the principles of avoidance and minimization. And on the one hand, it seems pretty straightforward, but I can tell you when you try to apply it in practice, it can be challenging because, avoidance and minimization are somewhat vague terms. Your idea of avoidance and the applicant's idea of avoidance might be two different things. I've avoided as much as possible.
Well, it does say avoidance. Ours says infeasible. So if it's infeasible, that to me is not an avoidance. It's like, okay, it's no possible way you can make it work without it. If there's a way possible that you can stay out of the buffer, you can't get relief by the way our regulation's written now. You can't get any relief.
Yeah, you don't actually have the term avoidance and minimization, you use reasonable alternatives.
Well, we also say it has to be infeasible. So if they can't show, if someone can show, no, you can still do that here and be out of the buffer, okay, it's almost like you didn't meet the hardship criteria of a variance.
It's
You can't again.
infeasible, it doesn't leave much to the imagination.
No, it does not leave any.
That's pretty
No, but
straightforward.
We've had a few that I think we definitely were soft on the infeasible part.
We were.
like-
But that's a decision of the board. It's not our regulations. That's a different issue.
You're just
Sound like a-
talking it as an absolute, and we have not upheld it as an absolute. And I know one right off the top of my brain that comes to mind on
Well,
that one.
infeasible isn't like, okay, you don't have right to have access to that uplands in the back. That's,
Not even like that. I'm talking about one that was an expansion, and we gave them an expansion into a buffer where they had additional land that they could have worked within, but it didn't fit the look or the layout of their property that they were going for.
and that's a decision. And if they convince the board, it's no different than if you go in front of the ZBA and you convince them of a hardship. And just, you know how many times I've disagreed with decisions, and it's like, but at the same time, I'm not the guy making the decisions.
Right, yeah, all you can do is advise.
Right.
And if there's, suppose you have a garage situation and it is leaning toward the buffer, but by moving it dramatically, the pavement increase that would be required to get to that garage had more impact than a little bit of the garage. I mean, you run into those situations.
Absolutely.
Which one has the minimum amount of impact?
Right,
Yeah.
Right.
That's, I think that was the decision.
And then that's right here where it says,
The other one was, the one, the expansion with the like pool or whatever on Swains Lake.
Oh, yeah, I know.
That was another one that,
Right. And it turned out that was less than 3,000 square feet.
right.
So it was a non-issue.
well, and John, you bring up an excellent point. At times, if we focus on a strict number, a distance,
Yeah.
40 feet, 35 feet, whatever, you bring up an excellent example where, being at 35 feet and having less pavement in the buffer is probably better than being at 40 feet and having more pavement in the buffer, for example. I hope we've written a document that doesn't handcuff the board so much that it takes away your authority or your ability to.
Well, that's why a year is a good idea to test this.
Yeah.
I mean, they're gonna be testing it, overlooking subdivision now, apparently, so.
oh, and I think the idea of the mitigation, so that wasn't in there before, per se. So if you look at something, okay, you did this, now you're giving us this, which is gonna it's gonna give us more relief than what you took away, type of deal.
Well-
Sometimes those can be a benefit too, when you're
Yeah.
looking at it as a whole for the community.
Right, it may give you more relief. What it does, it definitely does, is hopefully provide the board with more discretion to work with people. They're right next to a high functioning wetland, like that project that was just here. He's already conceded, they're trying to shoot the gap between two prime wetlands.
It's
They
gonna
don't
be
get much
that's-
more higher functioning than that. So, but there may be extenuating circumstances of why allowing them to go through there might, I can't think of what they are at the moment. I'd need a lot more information.
Well, that's why I said there's a gravel road there existing instead of just saying.
Yeah,
they
and
brought
that's
you know,
mitigating. That
some
may be mitigating for
Equipment in
them.
to cut some trees down. I mean, that was.
Yeah.
He's trying to suggest that it's an
And-
existing thing.
I think the way we're gonna look at that after he has his wetland delineation is gonna be totally different. And I tried to make that clear to him, he didn't wanna listen to it.
Well, I think, hopefully the point got through that, his yield plan is gonna have to be based on the ground delineation, not, GIS resources like we're using even, so, hopefully. And John, for what it's worth, just to get off on a tangent, I'm working on a 42 lot subdivision in Exeter right now, 10,000 square foot lots, and they cannot, the people are beating down the doors, and to get these homes on these 10,000 square foot lots. And the number one reason they give, most people, I know there's still exceptions, but most people, they don't want a lot of property anymore. They don't want to have to take care of it. They want small lots.
They want to live in a condo, and not even have to mow their lawn.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, that too. But this is the next best
I have a
thing.
husband.
We're not really in a condo, but we don't have to take care of acres and acres of yard or lawn or what have you. And they're just beating the doors down to get these.
And the people with that mindset, more and more of them are moving towards this area in Barrington.
Yeah.
I've got the list of the New Hampshire DOT flowers that they put along the highways, wildflowers. People just put wildflowers and don't have to put grass. Have some guy come in at the end of the season, chop it down, mulch it,
Yeah, one mowing, right?
unmowing.
So
Yeah,
we still have a
anyways.
lot to cover tonight.
I
Is
get
there
off on a
other-
tangent, it's fine.
I'm trying to.
Oh, you're trying to
reel
move
you guys
this
back
along?
in.
I just had one thing,
Okay.
and I don't know how it works. I was gonna add on 6, I guess on F. This assessment or function, or whatever you want to call it, should not apply to prime wetlands. We had that mentioned in the earlier draft, but I noticed in the last draft, where there were all the deletions, mention of the prime wetlands had been deleted, so.
Okay.
Just a thought. I don't know how anybody else feels about that, but
You might want the chart to be bigger if you're gonna use prime wetlands.
yeah, we
Because our prime
definitely
wetlands go to
decided.
100 feet. So if you're gonna include this assessment in it, you're gonna want your functioning values to maybe, there's gonna be times when that prime wetland, 100 feet needs to remain. You know, instead of having the 50.
We determined that we
We assumed it was
specifically did not
sacrosanct.
want this to include prime wetlands.
There was no reduction allowed. We decided there was just no
Well,
reduction.
There's
allowed.
no reduction allowed through this assessment,
Right.
but the regulation still allows it because you
Yeah,
have to
right.
have to have the opportunity to give relief. That was one of the, so if you want this assessment to apply, you're probably gonna want this so that it applies to your prime wetlands too, or else your prime wetlands is just gonna be based on the criteria we have now, because you don't have an assessment value to put against it for the values.
I'd rather stick with what we have now on the prime wetlands,
Yeah,
which
that's what I
was, we don't,
Yeah.
grant.
Well, you gotta
Well,
still
it's
meet
your-
the 5 criteria
Yeah,
you got in place
yeah.
now.
That's what
It's
I'd
the
rather
board-
stick
it's
with.
the board's decision,
Yeah.
right? That's what it comes down.
Well, the commission agrees with that too,
Well,
right?
I think maybe when you do this year's work going through, maybe even the prime wetlands, when someone comes in with one, the board kind of looks at that and, you know, sees how this assessment value works against it or with it, I guess I should probably say, to figure out, is it worth not including primes or
Yeah.
trying to figure out
Okay.
how to address it, you know, when you do bring it forward next year?
Wasn't the assumption that, you know, the value of prime wetlands is such that no reduction of a buffer was considered, you would always be at the 100 foot?
Yeah, yeah.
You would
More than
never-
likely, every prime wetland's is gonna score so high that there would be no allowed buffer reduction anyway, according to the table.
The fact that it's on the list of prime wetlands, nobody can actually go in and say, well, you know, there's not this function or that function.
This is.
It
this
just
is a
having it on
gray
the
Because,
list.
area.
well, it's because of our prime
Yeah.
wetlands, we have the overlay showing prime wetlands, but the edge of the prime wetland is the edge of the ponded area when they actually do their wetland delineation.
Yeah, right.
So the jurisdictional wetland a lot of times sticks way out past that prime wetland anyways. The odds of a 100-foot prime wetland buffer being the buffer you got to apply to is probably pretty slim. There's more likely going to be the 50-foot jurisdictional buffer that you're going to have.
Beyond
which
that,
makes you
right.
close coming in.
Yeah.
I mean, there's going to be circumstances where that prime wetland goes by it, but the majority of the time it doesn't on all the plans I've ever seen.
Right.
We have a lot to learn on this in the next year.
So I think by coming together tonight, I want to make sure that, it sounds like that the planning board is okay with them trying this out for a year to
Yeah,
work
the
with
concept.
it.
Yeah, when you guys do
Okay.
your
I
assessment.
don't hear you
thing,
guys say another.
if there's something.
Well,
that-
do we want a
Please don't.
motion?
if you
to-
would
motion to
like, I'd be
continue
willing
for
to sit
another
in and
year?
Kind of go over it so that
Great.
I can try to see how it, if you do a regulation,
Absolutely.
how it might affect trying to create the regulation.
Or just a sense of the board?
I have a lot of background knowledge
Yeah,
in
so.
Does everybody agree that
making
this is a
regulations and
good thing, that
enforcing them,
they
not
should
just
proceed
looking at the prime wet-
through
I mean,
another
the
year to
wetland
work on
issue.
this?
That would be great.
Yeah.
To do it like as a pilot for a year,
Just
at
test
what they
it.
presented and test it and then come back
I-
about this time next year, if it works or not work or whatever, to propose zoning amendments.
Well,
That's what they're-
the question
goal
I
is.
have is if we're talking about doing it as a pilot, how does that look or how does that work? Because if, you know, like, and I'm just gonna use, be like, oh, if I were the applicant and coming in and all of a sudden they're gonna be like, hey, we're gonna come out and check this out and do this out.
So it's
like,
probably
Is a
be,
pilot, there's no requirement to it, I'm gonna be like, no, or are people gonna be like, no, this is part of
Well, so the Conservation Commission at this point is gonna be doing that. So as part, when we get plans in, we send them to all the department heads of the
Uh-huh.
Conservation Commission. So at that point, the Conservation Commission would take it upon themselves.
Because you're doing this all for the maps.
Right.
So just like today, the Conservation Commission will make a recommendation. After doing the review, they could say, we went through this analysis and here's what we recommend.
Okay.
It's no different than a recommendation they make now without that system. Does
That,
that make sense?
yes,
All right.
that's what I was trying to, how does this connect
Yeah.
together?
Yeah, like you said, it's not a regulation. It's gonna be
Yeah.
a recommendation from them. But you guys have a right to look at that recommendation as part of your decision-making along with this by criteria.
I mean, the hope is that in the end, there may be some landowners who would be interested in doing this on their own. But it is something that the Conservation Commission has said, we do feel we could take that on. Now, when that expands to subdivisions where then the workload starts to be overwhelming.
The vast majority of the subdivisions that have impact on the buffers are usually something that involves a wetland crossing. And if it has a wetland crossing, that crossing
Goes
is
to the
exempt from
state.
buffers already anyways, because of how our regulations are written. Now, once in a while, you get one where it says, we can not have a wetland crossing if we go through a buffer over here, so they come in for a 9.6. So then the alternative is that you can't go in the buffer, so then they have to go get a wetland crossing. We actually had a planning board at one time that said, no, we're not gonna allow you to go to the buffer. They actually went to DES and said, the planning board won't let us go there, so we have to go through the wetland here. Then once they got the wetland crossing, they actually had more of a buffer impact than if they didn't have the wetland crossing, plus you still impacted the wetland. Like I said, I don't get to vote, but
Yeah.
I tried to point those things out.
Okay,
Well,
Good.
thank you for,
thanks for the input. Helpful.
thanks. 6B, zoning amendments review.
So, I compiled all the comments that we've done over the last few meetings about the zoning, amendments and how we wanted to, want to update a lot of our definitions and update, some solar information, elderly care, et cetera. Laura has reviewed the first part of it to make sure that it all reads like, correctly, I guess is the best way to say it. There were a few comments in here that for the contiguous upland, she was going to provide a definition. But after talking with her, as we were saying before, more of a regulation versus a, adding a new definition. She recommended keeping the contiguous definition, and the changes that were proposed for the, contiguous, I think it was in the section 4.21, number 19 in this packet, that wording should accomplish that. So I said I'd take that back to the board and see if there's something more that you would like to see. That's one of the major comments. The other comments was there was 3 definitions. The community center, where is it? Sorry, just give me a second. The community center, community care facility, and funeral chapel. I know we talked about the definitions. We didn't necessarily go over the word in the table of uses. We weren't sure if they need to be in the table of uses. So it's either, and this is item number 12 in the packet. Sorry to be jumping around, but to either add those to the table of uses or just take them out completely for the suggestions from her. And if there's anything else you felt like I missed or you want clarification, I think this is for our last work session on it. I anticipate after tonight that Laura would go ahead and start drafting the warrant articles and begin our public hearing process beginning in January.
Funeral chapels, I had a question, since they're allowed in the village district, for example, like on Cape Road, you put a funeral home there. Would you allow a crematorium right there too, which is allowed here?
A lot of times the crematorium is a small area that's inside the chapel.
I'm talking about, there've been a lot of cases in the news in the recent years. Maybe they weren't doing it correctly, and odor was emanating out of the building and so forth when they were cooking the bodies. Okay,
Nice to have
just
that
thought I'd
together.
toss that out.
Just once a
We
week you
have
figure
to
out
mark-
if you're electing. a
So
new
just
pope
to
or not.
keep things moving along, why don't we just start the bidding and go through, because there's probably some of these we can just keep rolling right by instead of jumping around back and forth, because usually once you start jumping around,
Sorry.
you get nothing
Thank you.
done.
Yeah,
Well, let's start with one I thought we had in here, but apparently I missed. In the, it concerns multifamily housing in the general residential area. Well, with the, and if you look at the description in the zoning, general residential is pretty much for low-density residential development and traditional subdivisions. Neighborhood residential promotes medium density, which you could have multifamily residential development in the central portion of the town. I just thought that maybe, get the sense of the board, maybe we shouldn't allow those in the general residential, that's all. I don't know what your feeling is.
It's only allowed with a conditional use permit now.
Right. But. Okay.
And this is multifamily you're talking about. so
Multifamily, right.
3 or 4 units.
Yep. You've got a little street, all little houses, and somebody could put an 8-unit thing right next to it, to your house. They have sufficient land.
But to do that 8 units, if you look at our regulation, they would have to have like 17 or 18 acres in order to get the density
Of course,
to get those units on there.
I can show you one on Malago Road, the beginning of Malago. There's a lot in the back.
Yeah, but.
Oh, no,
would the-
that's 14 acres. You know which one? The house with the 2 houses together, right? Is that what you're talking about?
I don't remember what the house
So
is, but you would
that's
need
already got-
access.
That's already got 2 units on it, 2 houses on it. It's a duplex there. They connect with like a breezeway thing going across.
Yeah.
So even at
Well,
that,
this is a separate parcel in the middle.
there's another one there?
Well, I don't have the map, so, okay.
I do.
never mind.
I
Okay.
have it right here. Where, you said it's on Malago?
Malago, it'd be the little ways down on the right-hand side.
Yeah, it's almost where the exit, the rear exit for the elementary school is,
But on the other side of the road.
on the other side of the road.
Yeah.
It's a massive wetland. Oh, are you
Yeah.
talking about the one beyond that?
Beyond that, yeah, there's no wetlands at all, it's all up.
Oh, no, there's still a big wetland on it, according to this map. Are you referring to this one? Your eyes, I know, you don't get into that point where I can't see anything. Is that the one you're talking about?
Because you need so much land to get the multifamily to begin with, that
There
it, the,
14 acres
Yeah,
there
that's
or
it.
something? I don't
Yeah.
know.
No, it's this one,
Oh.
I don't know which one it is.
the big one, next to it.
Just
So,
pick one on Malago Road and.
that one.
This one.
I first noticed it when it was behind the house that they were putting the childcare center in.
Talking about this one?
One of the neighbors was complaining about it. He said, wow, they could put a drugstore behind your house, lady.
It comes off.
Because it would be
It's
allowed.
actually, the access is off
Oh.
of Kate Road.
Oh.
is that Guptill's other pit?
It could be.
I think that Paul Guptill's other pit, because
But
he has the
it's-
pit right there off of that road
It's
coming
got-
back.
It comes in here, there's no
Paul
connection.
has the
to-
other
No,
pit.
you
it's
would
off
have
by
to
that
get
house,
access
Off by
Oh,
his
are they
house and his
talking-
mother's
this-
house.
Are they,
to this.
Is that like
person's
right around
property.
here? Is that what you're
And
talking
they-
about? I don't know
and
if
they
that's what
own
you're
both.
talking
are they
lots of
talking
them.
about Keith Road?
Oh.
The wet one and the other. Oh, okay, well,
No, they're,
that's not the key.
let me see.
Yeah, it's
I
off
don't think
of,
it's owned
yeah,
by the
it's,
same person.
yeah, that's off, of almost, it's by Lee Road, right, well, just before Lee Road
Mm.
changes.
Right. Oh.
And if you look at that, if they did a
is that
multifamily,
right here?
if they did a multifamily, it'd be back here, it wouldn't be right on top of the other houses.
Is this the one you're talking about? I don't know if that is.
And that's if they got enough uplands to get anything.
Yeah.
He's talking
Can we
about
slide
it
down?
come in
Sure.
through here and
Trying to
it'll be
get
this
the,
parcel.
83.
Doesn't, couldn't you
Oh,
access
no,
come
we're
in?
not,
There, you'd have
Wrong
to
part
come
of
in through
Malago
lot
no, we're
82.
on Malago behind this elementary school.
I was like,
Okay, so anything elementary schools over here.
So he saw a building there, or he's?
no, it's-
What are all these dots?
so if I look at,
That lot there, I think
like,
it's
so I always
12
like to
acres.
turn the base map on so I can see.
This. Now, you would have to get, and I
Have to
think
get access.
you'd
through
have to get
this
access
lot.
through here.
So they would have to.
I thought
buy
maybe this
lot
guy owned
in
both
order to
lots. I
get
couldn't
to
Or
here.
you come in.
But
No, that
he
was
could-
a
he
separate
could-
lot.
He could be
Point.
bought out by,
Can't you click on it and it will tell you who owns it?
Yeah, it's two different people. Well,
It's a
Blaine,
83.
Carol.
what's the size?
Who is it?
How come the
Well-
size of the lot? I guess you have to zoom in. Size of the lot.
What,
Oh, is that the road behind? It used to be Melanie Lane.
There's no road to it. You
Sure,
have
I'll
to go
share
through
it so everybody
somebody's
can look at it.
property.
Hold on.
no,
Share
there's a
my screen.
road,
Hold on.
Lady Slipper Lane. It has,
Oh, yeah, yeah. but
it
you'd have
comes
to-
to a point right at
Yeah,
the,
but you're not,
Did it say Lane?
I'm
is
not
her
saying
name?
you,
Their last name? The babysitter.
if
Lane,
you're,
yes.
like,
Yeah,
if
it's
you're
the
looking at it, there
I
is
think
a,
the guy
Right
owns the
behind
land.
King
out there,
82
though.
and 83.
Lady Slipper
Yeah.
Lane, I think he owns any place where that road could go.
yeah, cause I don't,
Actually
Yeah.
behind, you know where Jamie
but,
lives?
so your, what's your concern
So,
about
yeah,
it though?
what concern is you putting,
Behind that.
well, suppose you had a project on a small road.
Mhm.
And there's like 6 houses on that road, and it's a quiet little road.
They would have to upgrade it to be, if the road, are you saying is the road compliant or non-compliant with town
Class
standards?
5 road, yeah.
Okay,
And I just thought it wasn't compatible with such a neighborhood. So, not a big deal. I
Or-
guess nobody
or a
else-
significant dump of houses on an already existing class 5 road that,
It's okay. Never mind. I just thought following
You know what would
regulations,
solve
we
this?
ensuring more increased
density.
density is allowed.
But you're
Look
not
on
getting a
Beauty Hill
decrease in
Road.
density. If you look at the regulation in that zone, it's still based on the same thing as a single-family home. So to have a 3-unit thing, that's no different than if you had a 3-lot subdivision.
I'm not saying 3s, I'm saying you could put 8.
Well, 8 would be, you have to have enough land
I
there for
know,
8
right.
lots.
Right.
And
continue, yeah.
Well, if you could do 7 on 17, what I'm
1.8.
thinking about currently is, I can't use any names, forget how many.
But if
acres.
you do, but if you do the numbers to get it, you're looking at, let's
You're
call
going
it
to
2 acres.
70.
Because,
Yeah, 'cause
because
I
the
gave
upland,
this
because
guy
there's still the
19
upland requirements and everything else for each dwelling unit. So let's call it 2 acres for each one. So if someone has 14 acres, the most they could get is 7. I mean,
But your
Did
question
you
was.
say
it should be
seven?
I think
allowed
that's
at
my
all.
He
point.
doesn't want it.
Do you want 7 units there on a
In-
little residential area?
Are
want
you,
everything
you're
in
referring to
greens.
in the, but that's in the village district.
no,
No,
general
well, that-
residential.
I was just showing that.
He was
no.
talking general residential, which is a
General
whole,
residential
that's,
is my
but the
point.
general residential is not that little area on Marigold Road. The general
No, no,
residential is the
I wasn't-
whole town.
I
He's
was
just
just
using
using
that
that
one
as
as
a
an example.
comparison. I just
Oh.
said there are lots there. When you said nobody could find a lot of significant size, I just grabbed that one off the top of my head.
There,
I'm talking about general residential.
Right, which is.
Beauty Hill Road, for example, left side of Beauty Hill heading in, general, right side neighborhood. So. Neighborhood, you could do it in my world. On the left side, they're all single-family homes, little streets, little cul-de-sacs.
which way do you define the left side of Beauty Hill versus the
Leaving,
right side?
leaving from 125. Beauty Hill, the other one is Beauty Hill. Didn't you know the signs are different?
Oh,
Spacing or something.
I'll talk to the highway department about getting a new sign. It's been bothering me for years, but apparently.
one is like all one word and the other
Yeah.
one's
Yeah,
actually 2 words.
On the Young Road side,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
It's
this
only if
comes
you
back
live there, you
to,
notice that.
but this comes back to where I think your general residential is where like, I will be submitting a petition warrant article to alter density.
And that density was what would affect your multifamily too.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
And
Solved,
so
problem
your,
solved.
so your multi.
Give me the
yeah.
petition, I'll sign it.
So if
Okay,
it's,
come on.
so if
We're talking
it,
about
so
these
let's
right
say
now.
if you call it
These
3
right
acres
now.
for
I'm not
numbers,
talking about the
Yeah,
general
could you
part.
get, you'd have to have 24 acres or probably more just to
More.
get an 8-unit building.
Yep.
And it's a maximum of an 8-unit building. They
That
could
would-
be,
that would
it could
probably
be,
solve the
it could be
problem.
2, it could be
It's
2
the
before you
shoehorning
get some.
things in that we know is taking
Okay.
place.
So it sounds
In
like,
an
leave
inappropriate
it.
area.
I think there's a
That's
bunch,
no.
I'm not using any
So are,
names.
no, listen, are we leaving it like as it is? Is that what we're
Like,
saying?
well, yeah, nobody wants to change
Okay,
it.
that's what I
so
meant.
That's fine.
Okay.
That's okay.
So are we on to like the table of uses here?
Well, let's start the first page. just so
I
we
thought
can
were
work
on
our
the
way
first
through.
pa- That is the first page, the table of uses.
We're gonna start at the top.
I thought we just finished over.
Haven't even-
But
We haven't
is there
talked
any
to
I'm
comments-
still on 19.
Is there any comments on number 1? Solar.
Residential solar.
We decided not to
Ground-based, yeah,
exceed the
ground-based
100.
with 15 is fine, right?
Not to exceed a maximum height of 15 feet
Ground-based,
from its,
unfixed, unmovable.
right.
They're fixed.
The red is the new stuff. we're
That's
putting in.
high.
Oh,
That's a high solar system.
okay.
Why would we allow 35 feet on the?
Okay, number 2.
Wait a minute.
okay.
Below the track and ground mounted residential solar system should not exceed, you took that out, right?
Height restrict, so it said not exceed height restrictions for the zoning district, which their placement
Yeah,
maximum tilt.
So
well, I
if you
guess,
wanna go
I
to the
guess
height in the
commercial
zoning
would be the
district-
35 foot. Because the
What's-
regulations, John said 20, right? We talked about that.
No, it
the
depends
other
on the
day.
zone. So if you
That's
go to your
different
zone now, you gotta go to the table. So height,
Just like.
so the general residential, the neighborhood residential, and the village
35.
district
I think
is
they're all
35
35.
feet. The village, the town center, and the regional commercial are 40.
Or 40.
Oh, okay.
That's what's in our regulations
That's
for feet.
huge.
Yeah, it is.
But
Like,
for the
40
regular-
feet
Just
is
did a 30.
massive.
I know, but the tracking systems, they're like 32 to 34 feet, just natural height when they're straight up and down, just for the regular ones you see nowadays.
Just like the two we just
I
approved.
know.
The one
I'm
we
not
did.
saying that they're not
Right.
big. I think they're massive.
They are.
I mean,
Yeah, I
if you,
think one was 31 and a half feet according to the.
Do we
spec sheet.
want solar array systems that are that big?
I don't want any.
I don't want any. I
Then-
agree with you.
Then address it. Like, let's address it. So, like,
should have bought my book.
You want my
RSA
book?
674
Here.
says, 21, I think it is, says that the town should encourage solar, and they got the whole thing on not fighting against it. You're supposed to support it and encourage it and the whole bit.
But
That's
if
in the state.
everybody put one in,
so.
I'm
but
just
that
telling you what
doesn't-
the
We can
regulations.
support it, but we can also support the fact that there's a reasonable height restriction on
Yeah, you can.
what it is. So, is
so
it,
instead of the
But I-
48
instead of
unit,
40 feet tall, like,
Yeah.
is it 25? And you make every zone 20, no more, higher than 25.
Are you gonna waive all of them like you just did with berries and the one that you did on the,
I don't think, like, my personal opinion is I don't think they should need to be that big. Go put it on a roof if you want it that way, if you want it 40 feet in the air.
Wasn't the issue when Barry was here was that it
They-
was hard to find?
the smallest one you can get was 32 feet. You
Yeah.
don't make them any smaller. So
Right.
if you say 25, basically what you're saying is, we don't want any trackers in town. That's the decision you're making.
well,
So,
those are 48 panel ones. Those are big.
but that's your
can
typical,
get-
that's your typical
They
tracker.
come in 3 sizes according to the spec sheet. I saw ones, 24s.
Yeah.
Do
That's what I
24.
say. Do you say 25 feet?
I don't know, Barry, when he was doing it, he was putting out back, it wasn't gonna be terribly visible, so I don't have a problem with that. He put it right on the road.
Yeah.
maybe it was
Well,
fine.
the difference between
that's why it
berries
came in.
and a regular one, if you put it in zoning, is berries came in because he was using it for a commercial purpose. He had to come in for site
For
review.
commercial ones.
So if you allow it to be 35 feet and someone's putting it on a residential lot, and they're telling me they're putting one in that's 35 feet, I give them their permit. They don't come and talk to you.
Right. Right. Anything residential
Mosher is
primarily
supposed to
runs
be-
through John.
Yeah, Mosher
It
had a
doesn't
huge
even
one, and
come
he had to
here.
go to the ZBA to get a variance for his.
Yeah, because it was not on the setback.
Because it didn't meet the setback, not because of height.
Oh, okay.
And,
I'm just doing what you guys have
well,
told me
and
to do.
here's the other
Right.
kicker on it.
You
If
can do
you,
whatever you want.
We appreciate
if,
that.
if you look at the way there
It's
is,
not easy.
there's
easy.
not really a massive incentive for the most part for the homeowner. It's the solar development company that's peddling them that has the real
You can just
incentive.
leave it right there. You'll probably
They're
leave it
the
again. You put it right
ultimate
here.
winner out of all this. And if our restrictions make it really easy for them to come plop them in all over town, they're gonna sell the heck out of them to put them in every lot that they can around here.
So you want to leave it at 20 feet where it is now? Then you won't have to change anything. We can move on.
I'm good with leaving
I'd
it
be
at
good
20
with
feet.
that.
I'll agree with that.
Yeah, I don't. I think we should.
So you don't even have to change that. So that section, we can just,
Voted.
what got crossed, because what got crossed out was, a tracker ground mount residential solar system shall not exceed 20 feet of height at any point. All ground mounted systems located in the front yard shall be reasonably screened from the abutting residential properties. So if you uncross that, you could leave it in there. You don't have any change at all of that. You can just
Don't
leave it
have
the way
to
it is.
change it.
Yep.
How do you screen the 35-foot one?
Yeah. An
Put
oak
it
tree.
Far back. Well, so it
Well,
sounds like
the
you're 3 to 1
screening,
on
the
that.
screening part was taken out. That's,
No, no,
it's
no, I
like-
know, but if
So to
we
leave
were,
it then,
we were
is what
to
you're
say screen them,
so what'll happen then is someone who comes in for a residential one and they want more than 20 feet, I'm gonna tell them I can't give them a permit to them. They're gonna go to the zoning board and the zoning board would have to look at what the issue is with it.
Yep, that's fine. That's why the zoning board is there.
Correct. All right. So next,
Okay.
we can go to the next one. Go to number 2 now. Only got through one.
Thank you.
we'll be faster.
Hopefully.
Okay.
Maybe.
I did.
Once my show ended, so.
Second one is just to edit the definition of elderly assisted care and to update the table of uses.
So table of uses is where I got like all knotted up on these.
Yeah, that's
And
what
it-
I say too.
And the interesting part was when I started going through it, I'm looking at, my general comment was around when I looked at senior housing, assisted living facility, healthcare facilities, nursing homes, village, town center, regional commercial, all are listed as permitted uses. And then like a bed and breakfast or something like that is a conditional permit. And similarly, if I got into like home businesses, home occupations in those areas, conditional permit, but yet all these others are permitted. I don't have a whole lot of beef with them, I guess, in the regional commercial, but in the village and the town center.
It's a vote for the boomers.
But even a vote for the boomers, I'm like, you're gonna end up with a,
We're all gonna end up in the patch.
If we live long enough.
We live long enough. Yeah,
I-
I see what you're saying, yeah.
and then when I look further into it and I look at the footnotes, we struck the footnotes which limit some of the development on it. So now it encourages or promotes this more mass density.
Well, that was the whole issue when they came forward with that proposal on putting the elder care on that Kayla property.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't make buildings of that size work. They needed larger buildings. And that's what everybody had the discussion. So because there was a discussion and it was talked about, we should bring it to the planning board to possibly change zoning. When we brought it to you guys to talk about it, at that time, the majority of the board sitting at the table agreed that we should allow them to be bigger, and that's the reason why we made the change. Now, the 4 of you sitting here tonight, if you say you want to take it out, make it conditional use instead of permitted, and put that note 6 back in saying they got a max of 8 units, that's your decision you can make tonight.
I firmly believe it should be a conditional use permit. And when it comes to size, I think now you start getting into like the lot loading. And when you look at assisted living facilities and
Well, the lot loading would have been, we would have 6 buildings with 6 units on each one in the same lot instead of putting it all in one building. So the lot loading is exactly the same. But they were saying to make it feasible to work is they had to have everybody stay in the same building. They couldn't go building to building to building. So that was the whole reason why that got changed. It has nothing to do with lot loading.
But my concern about lot loading, which is not addressed in any of this, is when you look at putting a large quantity of people who are historically going to be on statins, medicines, chemo drugs, transfer drugs, things like that there. This is where you create all kinds of ecological hazards. It creates the feminization of fish, frogs. You end up with all these problems that are tied to it. And because it's not tied into a POTW, you're tied directly into septic, which becomes a leach impact on all of your environment in and around there. And then it's not managed and treated, so it starts getting into surrounding wells, water infrastructure. It becomes a problem that becomes much farther spread than anything we've even thought about at this point.
So there's no filters that?
No, you
That kind of
cannot
stuff,
filter,
that stuff can't be filtered.
you cannot filter chemo drugs out in your waste.
It's like MTBE, you can't filter it.
Right.
That's the same concept.
So, so you, and your well is gonna be outside of your standard radius, but guess what? You're sending all that nuke right back in and all the other products and problems with it.
So what data do we have from other communities? And we would not be the first community to deal with this.
Well, a lot of them have public sewer.
Right, they go to a POTW, they don't do it as local discharge. And if you look at the insurance companies and insurance industries, they are heavily monitoring stuff like this. This is a big deal in the insurance world.
Yeah, I guess somebody looked up on Kelleher Road, right, at that big parcel at one point, but they didn't want to pay for a road going in. Was there another
That was
group?
some guy that wanted the town to
He
build
wanted-
all of his
Oh, yeah,
infrastructure,
we had
saying,
to
I'm
build a
giving you
road for the
something
guy."
good, but I want you guys to spend all this money. It's like, no, come on, buddy.
It
you're
was like
dreaming.
a half-mile road off 202.
And I'm gonna give you this, and it's like, you're not giving us anything.
Okay, I wasn't sure of the particulars, but
But
I knew he wanted to do us to do the road, which
I-
was,
What's the density at Pond Hill, Pond View?
they got like 6
Assisted
beds.
living?
Oh.
Is that assisted living?
I'm not sure how many people are there.
No, they stay there too.
So it's elderly.
From there too long.
They have a
They
limit on
don't
their
have
room.
to
They don't have a,
really
they're way under the 15 that
Yeah,
has
they
that,
are.
that thing we got
I
here.
thought
They're
they were
way,
like 6 or 8 beds.
yeah, I
That's
think
about
they're
all.
way
They
under
don't have
that,
a
yeah.
lot.
But my concern is you start loading that kind of density in there and this becomes the takeoff for it.
Yeah, the one he was talking about, wanted 80 in the 80 units, 80 beds in the assisted living.
And you can
The
put up to
continuing
3
care part,
Right,
which
and you
is
can
the
put up to
medical
3
part.
people per room in an assisted care facility.
So the only difference,
That's,
the regulation change here, the only regulation change that this was making here was allowing the density to go in one building instead of them putting 6 buildings on the same lot. So as far as the lot loading and all the other stuff, that's not changing by leaving our regulations alone or even doing a conditional use on it. Because if you do the 3.4 and you read through it, if they meet that criteria, you're still gonna be allowing a
But-
density that's allowed.
But they,
Unless you
they
change the
couldn't
density.
get their density anyway, because they went to the ZBA and the ZBA
No,
wouldn't
no,
grant
they-
the waiver.
Well, the it wasn't because of the medical facility. They wanted like 80 residential
Right.
units over and above the medical facility.
Mhm.
This doesn't give them that. This still doesn't say you can have all these residential units. That's a whole different issue.
so they lost on the residential units.
Well, when they came in and
Well, no hardship.
so when they came in, the people started talking about
They
the
could have a
impact, and they said,
restaurant or
well,
bar.
we could put all these commercial things in there, and he listed them all, right? And as soon as he listed all of them, it's like, oh, you have all them other uses, so what's your hardship with this property? He killed himself, he shot himself in the foot with that, when he made that statement. Because without a hardship, you can't get a variance, that's number one.
I still think it should, my thought is all of those should be as a conditional, they should be a conditional use permit.
So right now, those are, that would be a change. So do you want, I'm gonna put-
They're all listed as permitted by use.
what they do now, today? Well, today, right now, is what, because you would have to make the change. I think 3 of them are permitted and 3 of them are conditional use now.
Yeah,
Senior housing is permitted and there was no.
the elderly
beds.
assisted care is what you were really talking about, were you providing medical.
But right
drugs
now,
and
there's 3 of them that are
everything.
conditional use.
The other one that stuck out to me is manufactured homes are permitted in the village district.
They're permitted anywhere in town.
Is that a state
They're
law?
not in the town center, but they are in the village district.
Town center, the only residential use you can have in the town center is part of a PUD. So that's the reason why they're not allowed there, because if you don't have a PUD, you can't have any residential use in the town center. Yeah, well, you can't even do that now. You can't do any residential at all there unless it's part of a PUD. So that's the reason why they're listed as not allowed in the town center. And then the thing is, the whole thing with the agriculture is you can't have farm animals there, but you can't limit growing the crops because the state says you can't limit growing your crops anywhere in your municipality. So that's the reason why they have the other footnote in there for that agricultural stuff. I'm just talking that town center use, you know.
Mhm.
I was involved with that whole thing when it all got created. That's why I know all the background. I think you should, number two, you want to change number two to CP on all of them or not? I guess that's, I mean, there's, we got quite a few in the number here to go through, so I think we should make a
Yeah.
decision on number
CP
two
is
and move to
good.
number three.
Yeah, all our CPs.
No, not right now.
Well, not right now, but we're proposing it
That's a
to be.
proposal on number 2.
No, right
Oh,
here.
it's not.
So right here, they're proposing this to still be
Elderly,
a P.
you're talking about elderly assisted
Oh,
care.
just.
Oh, he was talking about these down here on this table.
Well, that too, but elderly assisted care, it's all gonna be conditional use permit. So go, sorry, go to the
Next
next
page.
page. Yeah, but you started with the elderly care.
Right, elderly
And
assisted
that
care.
is all,
Yeah, so if you do the
proposing-
elderly number two, the whole thing all got changed to CP in the proposed changes. It's the next
all of
page
them.
on the table.
for elderly care, and then the senior housing, we were removing note 6.
So let's address two before we go to number three, so
Yeah.
we're not jumping
Yep.
back and forth. Let's start making some decisions. So right now, the elderly assisted care has got, they got changed to CP all the way across the board. If you go to the
Just
next
do a
page.
vote and see how it shakes out.
Sounds good.
And, okay, yep.
That be easier.
And then, and then we'll talk about the footnote piece after that, because that's two parts to it.
Yes, like, so I guess like the definition and then the footnote thing.
So
You guys
everybody
wanna do
good
that?
on going CP with everything before we talk about the footnotes?
Yes.
All right, so we got one step going forward.
Is that yes, yes, yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, all the way.
I think it's a no for me.
Okay.
I want to
Oh.
encourage it.
Okay.
You can still encourage it, it's just conditional use.
All right, so the footnote,
You have to look
That's what
at
I'm saying, it's
detail,
not,
look at the situation.
you don't get a guarantee.
They don't have it by right.
Right,
okay, so the footnote, removing the footnote number 3 from elderly assisted care.
so we want more than, basically what we're saying on that is we are promoting and encouraging more than 15 patient/client beds.
Other than in the general residential and neighborhood residential, 3 is still there. So you're trying, in your commercial areas, you're allowing to have more,
Village, town center, RC, and HCO.
that's where the 3 come out.
It's removing it.
Right,
Yeah.
you're removing.
So-
it. So right now, in your,
Keeping.
your neighborhood and your general is gonna stay 15 or under, because you're trying to protect your residential neighborhoods.
Yep.
Yep.
In these other commercial areas, you're saying they can have a building that's large enough to have more than 15.
I agree with commercial areas, but I don't define the village as a commercial area. When we talked about it, we talked specifically about regional commercial, highway overlay. Those were the areas I was like, yeah, definitely have no problem removing footnote
Yep.
3. But when I look at my town center and my village, that's where
Well, the concept is that town, when that proposal come through, that was in the town center, and people said they wanted it in the town center, and that's where, that was the discussion last time about if we're gonna allow it like that proposal there, that's the town center. So if you say there, they can't have it, then you wouldn't be able to put a larger building in that town center.
I mean,
I
the
don't-
village,
I don't think you
you
should.
mentioned the village part, you know, heading east of 125 is on the highway. The other end, it's Kate Road and Malago Road.
Wow, it goes,
Turbo-Can to Turbo-Can.
yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah,
And then it goes down Route 9, like you said.
Route 9 would be fine, but I'm talking about,
Would
you
it?
could put in Kate Road.
He's
and
saying
Malago.
that
where are
if
you
you're
putting it on
heading
Route
south,
9?
if you're heading
Route 9.
west, if you're heading towards Concord, Dover,
In the middle school.
he thinks it's fine having it going that way. If you're heading towards Concord, you shouldn't, but
Yeah.
we'd have to separate the zones. You can't have half the zone be one and half the other
Right.
unless you change
Yeah,
the
I know.
zone.
I would just take it out of the village. I think
You
that's
can do
the,
that. even though,
I don't agree with the town center, but by the sounds of it, I'm not gonna win that one.
Okay.
But
Oh, and you still, this is just what to bring forward. You guys are still gonna have to vote on it.
Yeah.
More than once as part of your deliberation before it goes out to the voters anyways.
if we ever get there.
I would leave 15 in.
So what should we say? Remove footnote number 3 from village. Does everyone, do you want to agree? Like go down and say if you want to take it out, take it in?
Sure.
Do you want it
So let's
CP
do it
or,
that way.
No, I just.
we're
No,
talking
that,
you want
the
it gone?
CP's done. The
Footnote.
We've already
CP's done.
done
We're just
that.
doing the
We're
footnote.
talking
Footnote.
about the footnote.
oh,
Footnote
all right,
3.
footnote, okay,
I think
15
footnote
beds.
3 should stay in the village district.
Stay in the village?
okay.
And
We're
that,
going around this.
that says you can do it in the village district, but you can't do more than 15 clients in the village. So that means you could build a facility, but all of a sudden you're gonna have, but your max is 15 beds.
Okay.
Personally, I'd
Which
take
currently,
it out
that's
of
what it
the
currently
village
is.
altogether, but.
I struggle with it,
I do
because
too.
I don't see much of a village being developed, and I'd love to see.
Right, it's primarily, it's just a more dense residential area in the downtown part, near downtown.
Well, it was supposed, the concept behind it was supposed to be a mix of businesses and residential, and the town center was supposed to be, try to be more of the business, but you needed a little bit of residential to support a downtown business to create a downtown. So that whole thing with the village was still supposed to be a mix. And that's why if you look on your table of uses, there's a lot of commercial uses that are allowed in the village district that aren't allowed in your general residential and your neighborhood
Right.
residential.
The problem is what happens is it becomes a village, it doesn't end up with the blend that it was originally going for. You have a house that's turned into some commercial entity. And it doesn't look the part, it doesn't feel the part, it just ends up being wonky.
Then you get the people that look at the other side by using the houses to make doctor offices and dentist offices and have all that stuff, keeps your downtown neighborhood looking quaint and nice.
Right.
So
Or you
your,
have
your argument can be good, just the opposite too.
Right, or you have the people who suddenly are pissed off because now you got a whole gun shop running around in your neighborhood.
We got a couple of them.
I know.
Okay, let's focus on the elderly care. We can talk about gun shops later. So, village, want to keep it as is. Or
Do you want to allow 50,
Unsure.
more than 15 or less?
village.
I guess more, if I'm wanting to support.
So you want to take note 3 out?
Bob,
That's how I feel.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
that's staying in.
All right, so it stays the way it is.
Same with,
You made your
so let's
pitch.
go down to town center.
Gonna have lots of petition signs this year. It's
Okay,
gonna be a big
town-
year for me.
Town, are you okay with keeping town center footnote number 3 in? Or removing it, I'm sorry, removing footnote number 3 from
So you can
town
have
center.
more, in the town center, you can
center.
have more than 15?
Yes,
I'm
yes,
not,
yes.
Agree
because
with that?
I argued against that from the get-go.
Okay, and then RC,
That's regional commercial, which is your,
Which is where I think it belongs.
so I say
yeah,
yes,
so
yes,
it's good to
yes,
have the
yes.
footnote 3 gone from that one then.
Yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
yeah, I
Then-
fully agree. Regional commercial highway overlay, perfect. That's,
Wow,
that.
the
those are
highway
the-
overlay goes all through your town
Oh,
center
yeah,
and
you're
your
right.
village district.
You're right. But I was thinking about it more at the
126,
outskirts of,
everything.
Okay,
Yeah.
so overall, we're keeping, or removing footnote 3.
Well, except for the neighborhood and the general residential, you're keeping them, like you
Well,
had here.
right here, whatever that says.
Yeah, so if you turn the page, you can see they left them in.
Mhm.
All right,
3-1.
so here they'll stay, but the rest of them are taken out.
Mhm.
All right.
Do you want to record that vote? 3-1.
I have it on
You
here.
get it?
Just more of a consensus, because it's not just trying to move it along versus like,
Okay,
we'll actually vote in the future one.
okay.
Senior housing, amend table of uses for senior housing, remove note 6 on village district, town center. But to have it on the highway, HCO to add to note 6.
So by voting for it, you're saying cool, we'll have senior housing with more than 8 units in it. In all of those downtown areas.
You could possibly have.
So we're talking about it downtown.
You're talking about removing the note from the village and the town center and the highway commercial overlay district. Or no, I'm sorry, you're adding it to the highway
Adding
commercial
it,
overlay
yeah.
district. Which again, now
Have
we,
more than 8 dwelling units, is what you're removing.
although, John, how does that work considering we just talked about the highway commercial overlay
Yep.
district also covers the village and town center because it runs right through the middle of
There's
those two?
there's some portion of the village and the town center that are outside that overlay, so they wouldn't be
Yeah.
allowed, but they would be allowed if they're in the overlay. Because the overlay just goes right along the road, so anything that's not right directly tied to the road wouldn't have the overlay.
At 750 feet from the center
So
line.
it restricts it to.
So that worked with my other argument too.
I was just gonna say.
Yeah. Like,
I'm not for or against anybody, but I'm just saying.
So-
So you can bring it up when you guys are voting for real, that if it's allowed in the overlay, then that's all we really need. We don't need it in the district. You can go ahead and argue that point next time, but we've moved off it too. We're gonna keep going forward because it's getting late.
That's number 3,
Number 3.
which
Okay.
is,
I still don't think it should be in the village center or the town center, or we should remove it from the village or town center.
for senior housing. That's number 3.
Okay.
And so he says no, yes, no. Okay. Number 4, the new definition of healthcare facility in the table of uses, removing footnote 3. This is the new definition. And in the table of uses, removing footnote 3. We don't have a definition for it.
Removing table 3.
So senior housing can have more than 15 units in it.
Or footnote 3, sorry.
No, we're
Footnote
not-
3 says you're limited.
We're on a
to 15.
healthcare facility.
Healthcare
We're not on
facility.
senior housing anymore.
Uh,
John, we've moved on. Come on.
I'm sorry, I said the wrong word. It's getting late.
You teed that one up. I was.
Yeah, I did. I'm sorry. I set myself up for it. I agree.
He's laughing about it, you know?
Yeah,
Better
so,
than opposite.
right, so is everybody comfortable with having more than 6 units? I mean, 6
Yes.
things in a healthcare? Okay.
So then, number
Oh.
5,
You guys are opening Pandora's box.
amend table of uses for storage facilities with a new note, to limit to a single story.
Good, cool. We're all
All
on
right with
board.
that?
Yep, you'll not hear an argument from me on that one.
Multi-story. I
I
like
know,
the looks of
you'll love
Bluebird.
Bluebird, you told me that.
Oh, I don't love it, but I think it looks a lot nicer than any of our storage facilities.
Oh, yeah.
Those are all, we got all single story ones.
Yeah, and they're all just tin boxes, whereas
Right.
Bluebird is a nice building, nicer than Turbo Cam.
Whoa!
That C5 is a
Let's
pretty
strike
boring.
that from the notes.
You've walked those floors too, so you know, right?
Yes.
Note to self.
Okay, number 7. New
Just like to
definition
point out,
for machine
I did
shop
not design them.
and add conditional use permit to the TC and village district.
Machine shop.
Say that one again?
We're at number 7, so that's probably the
Okay.
3rd page in. Sorry, I guess page numbers would have been helpful.
Machine shop is on the 3rd page of the zoning thing. Came that way. Sorry,
Okay,
I'm
sorry.
doing both here, so.
Okay, yeah.
Machine shop.
You want it in the town center.
But we kind of, before we talked
See,
about, it could be like a small guy doing like the 3D imaging, isn't that what you're?
Yeah.
Technically, that would meet
Because
that
technically,
definition.
that's the
Right.
machine shop. That would be okay.
How about additive manufacturing? 3D printing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I
Another
mean,
definition, you mean?
Yeah, I guess you couldn't call it a machine.
So
I
you'd
don't know.
almost have to change the definition. You've got a
It's
machine shop, 'cause it
manufacturing,
describes
it would
that.
fall under manufacturing, I guess. Necessarily a smaller machine shop. But, I mean, that's more and more, right? 3D printing with everything now.
I mean, that was the example that we, you guys are talking about, like other smaller.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll go with this one. We can always change it if everybody agrees.
The only reason I say it is I think about like a lot like what's behind Calif's. And all of a sudden now you have like a manufacturing, just this big box building that goes in there that's permitted by right and by use. But
Like
does
Turbo
not,
Cam.
not in the town center though, in the village, that's in the village district. But what I'm saying is, you put it in there, and is that what you want in your, is that how your town center is envisioned? Is that what you envision when you think of your town center? Because to me, it's not, and I'm a manufacturing guy, that's not what I envision for my town center, it's not the look that I go for, that I would want there.
Why, what was the motivation to take it from not allowed to allowed? It was,
Because of that 3D thing that someone brought up
Yeah.
during the conversation.
Like it's more than just the big manufacturing. There could be other
small-
businesses that would be
small
classified
operations.
as a machine shop, and that was like one of the.
Do we need different definitions for it?
I mean, it's as a,
Yeah.
it's as a conditional use permit,
Yeah,
So they
but
would
what
have to
would be
show-
your basis for denying it?
not compatible with the neighborhood.
So if you put a conditional use on it, then if you look at your 3.4, then you could use that conditional use. So there was like the building or structure would not be substantially
Compatible.
developable, abutting properties, a building or structure will be compatible with the neighborhood. So if you
Or
put a
general
condition,
flooded use.
so if you
Decrease
put a
values of
conditional use
adjoining
on it,
properties
then you
is a
can
reason.
apply them. But if you just had it as permitted, you wouldn't be able to apply
Right.
the
Yeah,
3.4.
CP you can live with, right?
Should change them all to CP.
The whole town should be CP.
All conditional use. Okay, I mean, as long as you've got a way out, and
You have
I,
to have it as a CP though.
Yeah,
What do you got
that's-
listed as now?
As a CP.
it's to add it as a CP.
Machine
Yeah, so if you're
shop,
adding it as a
well, right
CP.
now, it's,
It's not allowed.
What's the rule on appealing a denial of a CP? Did I read somewhere in this, it's not appealable to zoning?
There's,
it doesn't state, right?
I'd want to look that one there up before I answered it, but there is some things that are discretional, almost like being on the ZBA, to where if you don't feel that it complies and you have your reason why,
Yeah.
that's why when you make a decision, especially on something, when you deny it, you give your reason. So if you give the reason, then it's justified, it's not an arbitrary, I don't like you.
Okay, so when they look at, if they were to look at it,
Then that's
But I
the
don't-
reason why
I think I
your
read
notice
somewhere.
of decision is supposed to have all that stuff on
Right.
there.
Yep. Okay.
So, looking at it, I don't even see manufacturing in our table of uses under commercial.
Machine shop.
I
Machine,
don't see machine shop.
yeah, it's
That-
the
Under
fourth one
industrial.
down and under industrial.
Under industrial.
Where- Here.
Industrial uses, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And light
Sorry.
manufacturing is just above it.
Yep. I had gone too far back in the table.
Well, right now, the way it's listed as machine shop, it's not allowed in the town
Right,
Those
center.
two.
Or the village.
But, and it's permitted in the regional commercial, which makes sense, and then it's CP on the
So
other ones.
CP and all,
They're saying like if you have it in
Except for-
a general residential, why wouldn't you have it other opportunities
Yeah.
for
exactly.
commercial? Or not commercial, I guess it's industrial.
Well, it's stricken, on my thing here, it's stricken in the town center.
Yeah, me too,
Typo.
so we're adding,
Sorry, typo. I see.
Okay.
As in mine.
Okay.
number 7, okay?
It's small, I was trying to
Yeah, I
take
see
it.
the
It's
CP.
tiny.
Yeah, because right now, it's,
Yeah.
it's not allowed, and you change it to a CP, that's what was proposed.
You guys want to take a vote on that?
Oh, you want to vote on it? Everybody's okay with CP?
Yes.
Number 7's okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
And number 8,
Truck terminals, you are adding a CP to regional commercial.
In the definition, you agree with the definition?
Yeah,
everybody?
definition too.
and we don't have a definition.
Everybody okay with that?
I hear whispers, yes. Okay.
Number 9.
Number 9, warehouse operations.
We've struck out, at least on my sheet, we struck out CP in the first two.
Yeah.
Trying to find
And the
it here.
third.
The only place it's allowed is the highway commercial district overlay.
Regional
regional commercial.
commercial.
And, oh yeah, and regional commercial.
Adding a CP, right?
Yeah, and in both them zones of conditional use.
Mhm.
And it's not allowed in the other zones.
On those.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Well, it could be in any of those other ones in the regional commercial, it could still
Well,
fit
it
within
depends.
that.
It's in the overlay.
Right.
To be consistent with zoning ordinance.
Okay, number 10. Just talking about the lot frontage, just having the definitions match. Or have the,
Okay.
everything match, put it that
We
way.
had lot front, then we had lot frontage.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Okay on that?
And these were definitions for, we didn't have definitions for these tables of uses. We went through the table of uses to rectify definitions. So the new definitions we talked about to accompany the table of uses. Any questions, comments, additions, deletions?
Sorry there.
It's about to die. Are you low? Yeah, it's about to, it looks like.
I didn't have any issues with any of the other definitions, or any of the definitions.
The funeral home, just the funeral homes. And below you have funeral chapels. Can't cremate in the funeral home. But you can in the, oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry, it's E here, yep, facilities for
I guess it
cremation,
should be
sorry.
D, not E.
Oh, yeah, okay,
What are you talking about there?
no, we're fine,
Funeral home.
we're good. It matches funeral chapels, which is 12C.
Sounds like we're good for 11. So 12, or we want to decide to put them in the table of uses or to not even do these definitions. They're
What's
not
the-
currently the table of uses?
Just for my own clarity, the difference between a funeral home and a funeral chapel?
Can't you read the two definitions?
Yeah, but.
They look the same. Hold on, they look the same.
I still don't.
Why is the question?
Yeah, it doesn't bring clarity to me.
How
That's, I
about
guess,
next
where
to
I'm
funeral home,
I
you put
struggled with it.
slash, home slash chapel?
Just combine them.
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you think?
I don't know why it was called. two.
Well, the only differences that I really ran into were the storage of vehicles around the property,
Premises except in a garage are different.
right.
Yeah. No direct public street frontage. Okay. You're hiding things. So you think the funeral chapel definition, which you could use
Be better than.
and call
the-
it chapel home, chapel slash home,
Well,
is
like,
more,
what do you need
difference
funeral
between a
chapel
chapel and
for?
a-
Why not just put funeral home, put the first part of it, a building used primarily for human funeral services,
Funeral service.
And not pets.
which
okay.
is already built as a building or part therefore used for human funeral services, so it's, I feel like it's
it
already.
looks like part
addressed.
E of the chapel is storage of vehicles. Kind of be hidden, I guess. That's the only thing they're adding.
I mean, I don't know any funeral homes that are like parking them out by the road with their name embossed on the side, like, No. like, there's nobody like with a giant like tombstone pitched on the side being like,
I think
1-800, let us handle your loved one.
That's usually a skull and crossbones.
That can be on a flag though, right?
Exactly. But I mean, I've never seen a funeral home where they're plopping it all out there on display anyway.
And even you go by Purdy's,
Yeah.
you might see the hearse parked in the parking lot.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a function going on.
Right.
Even if there isn't, sometimes you see it parked towards the back. But that's part of the business.
Not
Why are we
parked
gonna
on Route
require them
4,
to put
right?
it in a garage?
Yeah.
That's
So
the-
just-
that's the
how about
Lee
we just
anyway,
strike the
suppose.
funeral chapel thing?
Perfect.
That's what it sounds
Yeah.
like. That's easy enough, right? Okay.
All set.
Well, what about the community care facility in the community center? Do we
I've
want
already
it?
expressed my feeling on community
I
care
know.
facilities.
Oh, he did before.
Okay.
Like my coffee, cold and black.
Good.
My soul,
You be you.
it's like my coffee.
You know how things are.
So should we
They'll say
add these to
black-hearted
our,
for you.
The guys at work told me it's just a pump. It's not actually a heart for me.
the community care facility and then community center? Should we just strike those and not worry about those at this time?
It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, I guess so.
It hasn't been an issue in the past.
Okay.
The other two are just definitions. Cause I know when we've had outdoor dining areas, people are asking like, well, what do you consider it? So I think it would be better to have that. The temporary structure. It's kind of come about certain things. And I just have a definition for it.
Because of the
Any issues with
COVID thing, they
those?
started doing outside seating. Before that, we didn't even deal with it. So it's like fix the regulations to say what you're
Right.
allowing.
Yeah,
I'm
definitions are
fine with
good.
that.
Yeah.
New definition. This is to amend Article 4.1 of, for sheds.
Quiet. I mean,
No, I
everything's, it's fine,
Yeah, I don't have any beef with it.
right?
Number 13, amending the, I guess my numbering
You
started
jumped
getting off
ahead
here,
on me a
sorry.
little bit.
Oh,
Because we went from the restaurants and then we missed this thing on temporary structures.
No, we
They were
talked
good
about
with
it.
They're good with it.
Keep
Okay,
up,
so-
John, keep up.
I know, so, but what I don't understand is, it's a temporary structure that's not used for residential use, and how come it's only 180 days? Not,
Because we talked, it would kind of, when we were talking before, it was the same kind of thing with the campground thing. We were trying to figure out what would be considered temporary. Like a specific period of time. Like, for example, when they do the outdoor thing, that's a temporary structure, the
Oh,
band
the
thing.
band thing.
Concerts.
The
Oh, thank
concert
you,
place.
concert. I was like, what the heck am I trying to say? If you want to modify, I'm totally, I mean,
I guess I'm not seeing the purpose it serves.
because we don't have a.
It doesn't
definition of
become
a
an issue
temporary
in
structure.
zoning. During your,
The issue we have with anything for the 180 days is people trying to live in sheds, not people having them up for 180 days. That's totally different than this.
If they do
It
that
is.
thing at Christmas. 6 that. Days, I think.
all right, you want to dump it?
I don't,
I'm not sure what you're trying to fix with it.
I think what they're trying to address is the temporary permanent.
Temporary permanent what?
Like somebody throws up like a hoop house, like one of those big hoop houses, and then like storage buildings, and then claims that it's a temporary structure because it's a canvas made, and it's not on a foundation, it's just on the ground. It's,
They put up
Soft-sided
a hoop
structures like
house.
that, you're allowed to put up to 400 square feet. It's an amendment to the building code that got put in because of the fire code. And they can do that. I've been doing them under the administrative zoning permits. If it's over 400 square feet, you need a building permit by how the building code is written. So temporary or permanent, it doesn't matter. It's still a structure. The only thing it would do anything different than that is if someone put up a tent for a function, but then they need a permit from the fire department because of the fire code by regulations, by state law.
But if they had the wedding in a hoop house at 400 square feet, Okay.
No, but they put up, like, say, one of them big tent
Yeah,
things.
the big tent, I
And
know.
it's, if they put up one of them, they actually need a permit from the fire department, and they can regulate the time by, it's in the fire code right now, because of egress requirements.
Okay. Then I have no idea what we're trying to solve with this.
I guess that's what I'm asking. What are
Let's
we
get
doing?
rid of
So
it.
let's get rid of it.
Yeah.
Move on.
Originally for like events and
It
stuff.
slows us
So,
down,
like,
it
we don't
goes,
have
how's
a-
that?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, if you would keep up, this wouldn't have slowed us down before.
Okay.
John's gonna beat me in the parking lot
yeah,
after
yes.
here.
Definition of structure to add storage containers. I guess my numbering started getting off right there.
Yeah, so that's the thing that's allowed without a permit?
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Well, I had one question there, because you're limiting the. to
but where are we
two-
at, sheds now? We're down here.
That's what I'm saying, that's what I'm saying, you haven't, so, so anyways, on the thing with the shed,
Yep.
you're allowed two, and it says for 800 square feet, and one is permitted for each additional 80,000 square feet. Now, if I remember right, it was 80,000 square feet or under, so if you had an existing lot of record that was like 60,000, you're still allowed to have two.
Right.
But this says you're allowed to have two if you have 80,000 square feet, so if you got less
Right.
than 80,000
You
square
can't have a
feet,
shed.
it says you can't have any, is what
Right.
this
Yeah.
says, if you read what it says.
Yeah.
So
Right.
instead of saying 80,000 square feet, it should
What's
say
it say?
80,000 square feet or under. You know, so it's clear you can have two sheds even if
Hold
the
on.
lot's under
Correct.
80,000.
Hold on. Is there any-
It'd be right here,
I know for a,
right here where it says 80,000
should I
square
just
feet.
say up to,
Well,
limited property for a,
for a
lot
For a minimum lot
for
size of
a,
up to
80,000.
80,000 square feet.
I would just say two per property for a lot size of up to.
Yeah,
That
80,000,
makes
because
sense.
then after 80,000,
And
you
then
can
one
get
per
additional,
minute.
yeah.
Per additional acre over 80.
Because that was saying you could have two no matter what the size of your lot
Right.
is. That was what the discussion was before.
And I guess in town center, you can
Property
have
for
unlimited
a-
amounts of,
Limit is two per
Sheds.
property for a lot size up to
80,000.
80,000 square feet. Okay. Okay.
No, it depends on the size of your lot. It's all based on lot size, no matter what zone you're in. Yeah, but how big is your lot? Oh, you're a legally existing.
Yeah.
you want to say
Non-conforming use
that?
now.
erase that from the tape, please.
Men, oh, she doesn't have a microphone. Generators, to add generators.
That
Be
was,
placed as close as building as possible. That
because
was,
that was because of the setback issues. We had it so generators weren't included to the things that were exempt from setbacks.
You put it right next to the neighbor's house, so it cranks the heck out.
amend section 6.3.2.
So anyways, this,
Oh.
so okay, it's under definition of structures. All right, so
Mhm.
then, yeah, that's exactly what that.
And it just goes G and then plop that in.
You're adding storage containers to street structures.
Yes. Yeah, right here.
But the storage container has to be under the 80,000 square feet, just like,
Just like anything else would happen.
they actually have a guy that has a 400 square foot one. You cut it directly in half. It's, the cut is that wide and that's how far apart it is.
Oh, no.
Because each one's 200 square feet side by side.
Of course.
Because I told him he couldn't have it, it's over 200 square feet because he never complained. That's how he fixed it.
Cut it in half.
And the neighbor said to me, he didn't move it, and I go, it's not touching. She goes, yeah, but it's in the same spot, and I go, how far apart do you want him to move it? I'm just telling, this is really happens in town.
Yep, real life.
How do you keep the snow out of it? And the
Just that
rain?
little-
care.
Just that little spot leaks.
Yeah.
So I'm putting things up against there.
Nothing to say you can't put a tarp over it.
That's right.
Yeah. The next one,
Big rubber flap.
is just kind of cleaning up some language about design and yield plans and define what a yield plan was.
Given what you're trying to do, and then we. Similar to this. 3, 2.
Comments?
I have no comment.
Hearing
No
none.
comment.
Hearing none, should I move forward? Okay.
It basically clarifies what you're already doing.
Yeah. The location of signs.
This had to do with the signs in the right of way and how we can enforce it and stuff, where they have like a for sale sign and the whole bit. We just tried to clarify it. Okay, moving on.
Um, 18 is also the sign thing. So number 19 is to address for the contiguous uplands. Initially, we kind of looked at also doing a definition, talking with town council. She recommended just keeping the contiguous and do a better regulation change. And I guess this is the one way to put it, because it's not in that one section, it doesn't say contiguous uplands. And she said, just be meaner.
Yeah, so,
To be enforceable.
but
I
the
don't
little,
know.
yeah.
Yeah.
But the little change of poorly or very poorly drained
Yeah.
soils. So right now, if you have jurisdictional wetlands, you can count it as part of your 60,000. By making this change, even your jurisdictional wetlands doesn't get counted as part of that 60,000.
Oh,
That too.
That's what that change makes for the poorly and very poorly drained.
good.
That's a huge difference.
It is, yeah.
Mhm.
There is some change.
Right up
That's
the
a
other
huge
one.
change.
Sorry.
As far- That's a
the
huge
part.
change as far as how you define the lot for that 60,000.
Yep.
It could be, a yield plan now will give you 5 or 6 lots less maybe when you're doing a conventional subdivision, because now it's gonna be 60,000 free of wetlands, basically.
Right, right. I think that's,
That's a huge
I
difference.
vote for that.
Well, that was one of your proposed changes, is,
Yep.
you know,
No,
Well,
I-
that was, I had a big beef on that one where we had
we had
these
a lot of.
Yeah, it's like,
contiguous
how do we-
uplands
they're like,
issues that are.
Yeah. So that was
I
the
mean-
best way to address it
Yeah.
versus doing a definition, because you'll see over here definition. She just had
Mhm.
to take that out, so.
and if you got 60,000 of uplands on every lot, the odds you having more than the 35,000 contiguous is pretty high.
Okay, been good.
Good. Amending standards for, it's just some language changes. This was for the, let's see.
So this
Lot
applies for the
sections.
1 and 2 families too, so if you've got a single family unit or a duplex that's got 2 units in it, those upland soils all got changed to those things to where it's all wetlands, it's not just the hydric A soils.
I have a question.
Yeah.
With the 4.2.1 parents 2 for each additional 1-bedroom dwelling unit under a common roof, which does not qualify as an accessory dwelling unit, blah, 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 blah. Minimum lot size shall be increased to 40,000 square feet of height of free, poorly or very poorly draining soils, open water bogs. And then right below that, if you carry on, it says, or exposed ledge shall be increased by 30,000 square feet of contiguous uplands. Is there a reason why we didn't go 30, it doesn't say 35,000 square feet of contiguous uplands, kind of like the standard one for 4.2.1 parents 1?
Yeah, because if you look at the 2 family, it talks about having the 35,000, that was in there before. The 30,000 was in there for the single bedroom. So if you change that to 35, then why even list 1 bedroom and 2 bedrooms separate? Because then you're going under the same requirements.
So the,
So if you're adding a 1-bedroom unit, you don't need as much upland soils or contiguous uplands. Well, before there was nothing requiring contiguous uplands. You just had to have an additional 30,000 of uplands, and it could be not contiguous. So now it's got the contiguous has to be 30,000 contiguous, but it also, the upland soils goes up because it's not just poorly drained, it's all wetlands that are exempt in that calculation. Does that follow what I'm saying?
I don't.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So
I'm-
right now, if you wanted an additional one bedroom,
Yep,
you needed 30,000 of uplands.
but
So
in,
you could get 30,000 uplands, didn't have to be contiguous, that contiguous is added. So it could be 30,000, but that 30,000 wasn't listed. But the 40,000 said it could be just hydric A soils. So now you need 40,000 of upland soils, not just non-hydric A soils, because hydric A soils is your very poorly drained. So your poorly drained wetlands, which is your jurisdictional wetlands, now could count as part of that 40,000, and now it can't count as part of that 40,000.
Right.
So you're making it so the odds are they're gonna have to add probably 1.5 or 2 acres even to do a one-bedroom unit, depending on what the soil types are. And you're using the soil types to define the use instead of just doing a blank number.
That makes sense.
I understand what you're saying. I'm trying to apply it across my, like, pea brain. How
Okay,
how
so
does
right
this
now,
actually
so
work?
let's say right now the guy had, an extra 40,000 that didn't have prime wetland, I mean, very poorly drained soils on it, but he had poorly drained soils. So like now, he could have 40,000 of wetland, that's jurisdictional wetland, and he would meet the requirements. If, by making this change, it would have to be another 40,000 of uplands.
So I'm trying, like, let me walk through this and you tell me if I'm interpreting it correctly. So originally, you start off, you have to have your 60,000 square feet free of poorly,
Very poorly drained,
very poor or very poorly draining,
not
poorly,
poor, not
well,
poor.
it says poorly or very poorly draining
That's your
soils
change,
up above.
that's your
Right.
change.
So you've got to have your 60,000 square feet on your minimum of an 80,000 square
Correct.
foot lot, right, to begin with.
Correct.
So then you want to add a one bedroom. You now have to have 60,000 plus an additional 40,000 on the lot size. So your 80 now has to become 120,000 square feet.
Correct.
And your contiguous uplands of good soil has to be 90,000 square feet.
It would be the 60 plus the 30. So
30.
you'd have to have 90,000 of upland soils, where
Right.
before you just had to have 90.
Contiguous upland soils based
Yeah.
on the new change definition.
Right, so, and before you just had to have 90,000 that was not very poorly drained. Because you could have that 90,000, part of that could be wetlands, not upland soils. And it didn't
Okay.
have to be contiguous.
Big change.
This is a huge
This is
change.
good.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's a huge
That's,
change.
I just wanted to make sure I was in
Yep.
processing it correctly. Okay. I'm good. That
All
answered
set
my
on that one?
question. Did that help anybody else besides
Yes.
me running?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Good.
Mixed use structure is the next one. We're just taking commercial out of that definition. Number 22, we kind of already addressed the uplands and how that should be done, so that there won't be a new definition.
Okay.
23 is just to remove the current definition of accessory building, because it's redundant. It's the same accessory use, what you guys talked about last time.
Yeah, so if you go to the table of uses, the table of uses at the very end of it, it says accessory structures.
Yep.
You're on table of uses.
Accessory uses.
Yeah, but
They're-
it's at the very end.
Oh,
Right
right
here,
here.
you got accessory use on
Uses.
page 95.
Yep.
So all these things are listed as accessory uses. So to have another definition of what an accessory building is, you already say, have it here as it's a private garage, farm produce stand, in-house dwelling unit, recreation and swimming pools are considered your accessory uses.
That's where we do that.
Swimming pools are an accessory use.
Can't put a swimming pool in without a house.
Why not?
That's what this, that's
No,
what
I'm just saying.
this is an existing regulation. If
I
you
know,
want to
just
put a
saying.
swimming pool in without a house, then you gotta change it and not call it an accessory use. Just like you can't put a garage in unless you go to the zoning board.
I was just
If you
gonna
don't have
ask
a
that.
house,
What
you
about
can't put a
putting a
garage on your
garage?
lot. You
Right.
can't put a garage on your lot now unless you have a house there.
Okay.
I mean, that's already, that's was existing. It was like that one since
Yeah.
before I got here. But you can put a barn because agricultural uses are allowed. That's why Dan Air put a barn up on
Right. On Castle Rock? Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for going through that.
Okay, next item on the agenda,
Where there's a will, there's a way.
I'm just making a statement.
capital improvement.
You guys wanted to,
Are we
Oh,
coming back?
oh,
on-
yeah,
yeah.
can we just have just make it clean, a vote to move those changes forwards for for her to draft warrant articles.
I, less the
Motion,
ones-
Hold on, you make a motion. You guys need to make a
motion to
not me.
move it forward.
For warrant
I'll
articles.
second the motion.
Okay. All in favor?
I, less all the stuff I said no to.
Tessie or I.
You can't split your vote. into
Yeah, I can.
You guys say aye.
25 different
Are you
pieces.
voting or
We
you
all
just?
said
I already say yes.
Consensus, okay.
Yep.
Did you vote?
I did.
Everybody voted. I heard them.
Yay, yay?
Yeah.
All yays.
Yeah, to move
Yeah,
forward
around.
for the,
Don't listen to
All the
him.
things I voted no on.
He wanted to split his
okay.
vote 12 ways, but we can't allow that, so, sorry.
Seeing as you had split votes on this stuff, I'm assuming when you vote for what's gonna be moved forward, it could be another long meeting.
That's what that was, 31.
No, I
Bring
meant,
the whip out.
3 to
I
1.
mean, when it comes to the different
Oh,
discussions,
planning board. vote,
discussion-
one,
yeah, before the planning board votes whether or not to bring it forward, I'm assuming a lot of discussion between them, kind of like what we've had. So I come to that meeting, I can assume that it's gonna not be a short meeting.
Well, Andy should appreciate.
I'll pack my
Haven't been
lunch.
haven't,
I think it'll be in January.
haven't won this crown
And
before.
Ron
He
will
should
be
appreciate how
back,
difficult
and Ron
this
will be
is.
back to help participate.
Yeah, we'll get Ron back.
I don't
mean
have to
in
worry
the
about it. I'm
meeting?
just gonna have a bunch of petition warrant
I said
articles.
help participate.
Well, I felt bad for these guys here. I had to keep asking questions, and the guy was just waiting for some questions, so.
I think he was trying to.
Just a little
lead you
patter
here.
To agree into
Right.
something that, without having information.
Yeah.
You guys did a very good job of saying, bring forward what you got and we'll give you those answers.
Yep.
All right, so, ready to do the capital improvement thing? Anybody have any questions or just pass it on to the select board? They're gonna
This is
keep
another one
moving
where I
things.
voiced my opinion on it.
Yeah, I
and
know we
don't
did.
think it changes much.
Okay, is there a motion to, what do we want to do?
Whoa.
Approve it?
Oh, you don't want to change anything? We're good?
We've changed it, but it doesn't matter. It
They-
goes through
they
the
just
select
put it
board and then
back,
they just
so-
put it back the way they want it.
That's fine.
So, like, what's the point?
Okay.
Apparently, they're the Supreme Court, so.
All right, so who motions to, I'm sorry. so
It's a
no-
planning board document. It's a planning board document that's being that's being changed
That's
by the
fine.
select board, so it doesn't matter what we put forward, because they're just gonna do what they
Well,
want
The
anyways.
money, when they look at
It's
the
a
money,
planning
things
board
will change
document.
anyway.
To use as for the selectmen to use as a tool moving forward. It's not a hard thing where the selectmen have to do what the planning board says.
Right.
It's a tool.
But they're changing that, we provided that tool, we presented it,
We
and they
gave them our
changed it, and they
insight.
gave it back.
Well, they're still using it as a tool, which is,
And we've already said, we don't agree with this.
Okay,
That's why I don't know why we have it here again tonight.
yeah. So do you want to vote to,
To move it, well, because last time at the last meeting, Buddy was like, we should look at it another week and then figure it out from there.
well, we've
So that's
done
why we're
that.
back.
I looked at it all
Yeah.
week long.
There you go.
And we're back,
And
We
so-
did it for 2 weeks.
And it doesn't change.
Adopt it.
Exactly.
All right, motion to adopt,
I motion to adopt.
second, roll call,
Nick,
Get the other way.
Tessie or I.
3 to 1.
Who was the one?
Yes.
who do you think?
AK.
Okay, so the next,
Who made the motion on that?
I did.
It was made by
Oh,
John,
you did.
seconded,
No,
it
it was
was
Bob.
made by Bob,
Bob,
seconded
and I
by John.
seconded.
are you leaving or are you staying? What's happening?
Just this kid is gonna vote on.
So next, the last, oh, sorry, I'm.
No,
I'm
go
taking
ahead.
over. I'm
Go
taking
ahead.
over, I'm sorry.
Take over, please.
Motion to adjourn?
Well, not yet, vote on
you got
zoning.
more
am-
to do, I get to leave.
Okay, shh.
Take care.
John.
You're dismissed.
Bye,
No, I'm
John.
kidding.
Thank you.
See you
Thanks,
tomorrow.
Always a
John.
pleasure.
Vote on zoning amendment, public hearing dates.
Didn't we already do that? I thought we did that last week.
No, last week was just for the,
A calendar.
the calendar.
No, this is-
So that
Okay.
the
gotcha.
calendar in your packet's the calendar going
good,
forward.
sorry.
This is to vote for the public
It's
hearings
been
for
a
the
long
zoning.
night.
It's-
So we have January 9th, January 16th, and January 23rd.
I try
Everybody
to make
agree
it
on those
not
dates?
I agree.
conflict with other things.
So do you want to vote
So-
on those?
Yes, please.
Is there a motion to accept these proposed hearing dates on?
I
this
make a
evening?
motion to accept all three of
And
the
I will
hearing
second
dates.
that.
second it.
Joy,
Oh.
let's do Joyce.
Joyce Capiello seconded it. Roll
Andy?
call,
Andy,
Andy, just
just
say
raise
aye.
your hand.
What am I raising my hand for?
the adoption of the voting amendment, public hearing dates.
Capiello, aye.
Okay,
Tessie, aye.
Driscoll, aye.
awesome.
Okay,
Motion to adjourn?
motion to adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move that we
If we
adjourn.
could, I'd like to
Joyce did.
revisit.
Joyce already did. Who's second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Andy, roll call.
Roll call.
Capiello, aye.
Tessie, aye.
I plan to be out of here at 8:30, so this is really disappointing, so. But what the hell, had a good time.
I did.
Well, if you hadn't brought up that first
Well, I got
non-issue.
longer because I thought we'd be done.